I'm Lance Grensback. I serve as the chair of the select board. With me this evening is Jacqueline Welsh, Mike Betancourt, Ariana Goluboff, and David Arico is on the phone. Will be joining us shortly, and our town manager, Richard Howard. Welcome. This is the regular meeting of the select board. Today is Monday, September 24th. Let me go through and just notify you briefly of the next sets of meetings and hearings that we're going to be having. We will be meeting this Thursday, September 27th. We'll be holding a public information meeting, or public information session. It will be held at 7 o'clock in the McCall School Auditorium. And the topic is to hear plans for the installation, trenching installation of the 115 kilovolt line by Eversource. They're going to run basically there are two lines, one dead, one active. They're going to thread a third one from the power station on Pond Street in Woburn down Pond Street, Woodside, if I get this right, Fletcher, Wildwood, Woodside, Wildwood, Fletcher, Bacon, and then Main Street over to the Woburn line. So we will be looking at the first section of that, Pond Street to Church Street. The Eversource people will be there to explain in some detail where they're going to put the trench, how long it's going to take, and the provisions they've made to make sure that people have access to their driveways and their service is not interrupted. So that will be an information session. It will be in McCall School Auditorium at 7 o'clock this Thursday night. There will be a second information session dealing with a section from Church to the Medford line. That's going to be on October 11th, same location, same time, so 7 p.m. at McCall. So there'll be two sessions, one this Thursday and then one on the 11th, to describe in detail for residents who are interested the process of constructing this line. So the board will be meeting in our regular sessions like tonight on Monday, October 1st, and they'll be then meeting in a special session with the planning board on Tuesday, October 9th. Is a joint session with the planning board to look at issues on the master plan that they're working on. There will then be regular meetings scheduled on October 15th, October 22nd, and October 29th. Much of our work aiming toward preparation for the town meeting in the fall and early November. So we will probably have other working meetings during this period, but we have not sorted the time out for those as yet. I don't have any detailed comments, but I'd like to welcome Brett Streckenbach tonight. I think as part of a project he's was asked to attend a board meeting. I hope he doesn't sort of go away sort of shaking his head, but to welcome this evening. Other board members, if there are comments you'd like to make on issues, current topics, notifications.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that was involved in the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation road race yesterday. I'm still a little sore and apparently very out of shape, so it was helpful to know that. But police, fire, the foundation, everybody did a really good job, and it was a great event and had a record number of participants and raised a lot of money for a good cause, so thank you.
Jackie?
Yeah, I just wanted to once again encourage everybody in Winchester to come out and support our youth sports teams this fall. There's so many of them and great fields in town, and whether it's young grade school kids up to high school, that it's a wonderful community bonding experience to be out, even if you don't have your own kid on the field or your own grandkid. And also always want to encourage people not to forget to utilize Winchester's wonderful businesses, including our wide selection of great restaurants, apparel, services, bookstore, etc. And then for the record, could we just have the name of this wonderful student who's here this evening with a great West Point baseball cap on?
Brett Streckenbach?
I'm sorry, and what grade are you in?
Seventh.
Seventh. And are you at McCall?
No, I go to Roxbury Latin. It's a school.
Roxbury Latin, that's great. Well, thank you so much, and if you have any questions, make sure you ask our chair after.
And Mrs. Welch has volunteered to answer all the difficult and embarrassing ones that are. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Okay. David, comments?
No.
Okay. The only other thing that occurs to me, I had the opportunity to sit outside the post office this afternoon trying to wait to mail some stuff just as the junior high students were letting out. The board last week had, the town manager had an initial meeting to implement our traffic safety study around the McCall School. I was entertained by the number of ways kids cross the streets. I don't think I saw anybody actually using the crosswalk, so if there's any question about whether we need to rethink how people are crossing the street in that area, it's definitely a need. If your parents listening tonight, I would strongly encourage you to actually see if you could try to convince them to cross at the crosswalks. I would say 9 out of 10 came nowhere near it. Between cars, around cars, over cars, it was quite, Mariano has detailed the issue before, but I think he's quite correct. So, okay, that finishes the comments. I'll turn to the town manager's report. Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Lance. As you can see in the packet, we have a recommendation for 2 appointments to the Disability Access Commission, and we're passing those along for your information, but a familiar name, Mrs. O'Connell, who does so many great things around town, but especially in her efforts to coordinate both the Memorial Day and Veterans Day parades with the veterans associations in town, but she is asked to become a permanent active member of the commission. She's an auxiliary member right now. We're glad to do that. And a new person, Donna DePriest. We will also appoint to a vacant position, and the dates are in there that you can see, so.
Do we need to vote these, or are these your
No,
appointments?
I think the manager's appointment, we just
Okay.
put the vote down there just in case we need it, so,
All right.
but I think we're good. A couple of other topics I'm glad to report on. So we heard today that the Winning Farm land transaction closing went through, and the Bond V team, who will be putting in 29 over 55 resident units, will begin its work in earnest, we would hope, in the not-too-distant future for that development. But the good news is, as part of that, the board had negotiated payments to the town that total $1.5 million. And those checks are in the mail, and we expect to receive them sometime this week, and they will go into the town as additional revenue, $500,000 of which will pay for upgrades in and around the site, up on the Thornbury Road area, where we're upgrading the sewer pumping station up there that will help handle some additional flow that will come in from not only the neighborhood, but this new development as well. So we're happy to see that development.
And I think for those of you who've been following that since, I believe, the late 1990s, if I'm not mistaken, it's been discussed. I think perhaps credit to Mike for suggesting we talk with Bondi somewhere along in the process, and things like that, and to Mr. Howard.
Yep.
For persistence.
Mr.
Tolerance.
Betancourt, for sure.
It's been a long effort, so that's really good.
And it may be that the Bond V team would propose to come before the board in one of your October meetings, just to talk about their plans, their schedule, and wave the
Although
check.
now
Wave
we're
the
not
check
gonna
in
know what
front.
to do with ourselves.
Exactly, you know.
about this.
I want everything to
We should
look
also
forward
have,
to, right?
if you don't mind my
Yes.
saying, we should hat tip the planning board as well for working closely with them on,
Yes.
we have our chair of our planning board in the audience today for other matters, but nevertheless, hat tip to the planning board.
Stand up and take a bow at the, we're glad to see you survive the process too.
Although I think I was chair at the time, but anyway, yeah.
Okay.
So, good piece of financial news there. Also, last week, we want to thank Congresswoman Catherine Clark and FEMA for a grant that our fire department received through the SAFER program, it's called, at the national level, for the funding of 2 additional firefighters that will come onto the fire department workforce. It's a descending grant that, over a 3-year period, ends up positioning the town to have to assume all of the costs, but it subsidizes those costs to a large degree over the first 3 years of the grant. So we thank both the Congresswoman and FEMA for its efforts at considering Winchester and its fire department. The Manchester Light project continues to go on. As you know, the football team played again on Friday night, and they're actually on a pretty good winning streak. They're I think
Lights.
3-0, Dave,
Yeah,
that's
it
the
is the
lights
lights.
that's providing the
See
magic,
that.
but we continue to discuss either other measures or other steps that may be taken to mitigate any light spill over to the neighborhood and other issues as well. But based upon feedback that we've gotten from the police department and the athletic department, there have been no issues for any of those Friday night games, so good news there. The needs assessment that the board authorized management and a variety of stakeholders to launch out on will be unveiled on the 23rd of October. There'll be a stakeholder meeting. The report will be made available then, and then from there to the general public. But we think that the consultant has done a very nice job identifying townwide and demographically varied needs assessment for a variety of Winchester populations, youth, young adults, and seniors as well. So we'll look forward to that document becoming available. And of course, we're working on the warrant for fall town meeting, which really is not that far away. It's probably 5 weeks or so. And the management team, the usual people who chip in, and Assistant Town Manager Mark Toogood and Jennifer Caffarella, together with a legal team, we'll hopefully have a document put together that'll have fall town meeting have a number of things to consider when they convene. So that's where we're at.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, if not, take up matters from the audience. Is there anyone who'd like to comment on an issue that's not otherwise already on the docket? No? Hearing none? Okay, thank you. We have no comptroller's report. We did have Stacy's report at the last meeting, so if you want to check on the case of the town.
And I should
Sure.
say, we did get our free cash notification
Okay.
from DOR, and we'll circulate to everybody for Monday night's meeting, FYI. But
Oh,
good
Okay.
news, better, again, good financial news, better than what we had anticipated, what we usually project. So it's a good, healthy contribution to the town's bottom line and reserves, and puts us in good position of handling the upcoming fiscal year, so.
Okay. We have no licenses. We have a hearing which is scheduled for 8 o'clock. However, I will not be able to open that until 8 o'clock, so we'll be taking up a few other issues to begin that. So I guess if the board will allow me, I'll skip to the first item, G1, on the business item for the next 10 or so minutes. That is the Housing Authority, 10 Chester Street. Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Good to see you back.
Thank you.
Would you like to approach us and introduce yourself and update us on the negotiations?
I will. Stephen Anderson, I'm the Chair of the Winchester Housing Authority. Since we last met a week ago, we have met with the owner and the tenant, actually, of the unit above the one that we want to buy. There is no occupant of the unit that we're going to buy. Pardon me. But it was important to come to an agreement with the unit owner above so that we could have, sorry.
Perfect timing.
Why, Jack?
Timing is perfect.
Sorry.
We've been joined by Jack Hurd, the
Jack
director.
Hurd, our
Yeah.
executive director, the just-in-time executive director. We did have, I shouldn't say we, I should say Jack Hurd had a very good conversation with the owner and occupant of unit number 2. They're very willing, as they should be indeed, to allow the housing authority to basically take control and become manager of the 1 and 2 unit condominium. We now have to get that reduced to a written agreement, which we're working on. And the next step in getting that accomplished was meeting with the cooperative bank, because they hold a mortgage on unit number 2, and we couldn't come to an agreement, or we couldn't do anything about it, an agreement, so far as changing any of the documents were concerned, unless the mortgagee bank agreed. They were very agreeable, also very pleased that we would step in and become responsible in general for the operation and maintenance of the condominium. So, while we have not gotten everything reduced, oh, and I should add that the Cooperative Bank also very generously offered to provide a lawyer, an independent counsel, to the occupant of unit number 1 upstairs, to give them independent legal advice to be able to judge what we were proposing was, if not in their very best interest, certainly not contrary to them. And I think it is very much in their long-term best interest. So I think that really paves the way toward going forward. We have to reduce all of these agreements to writing. In addition to that, I've gotten confirmation from the Winchester Housing Corporation. One of the parties that were instrumental in originating this whole transaction 20 years ago or so, that they're willing to assign their interest in the ground lease condominium, rather complicated, but they're willing to assign their interest to the housing authority, which really facilitates our being able to take control and operate the condominium. So we have every expectation of being able to put those written agreements into place and proceed by taking an assignment of an interest from Winchester Savings Bank and following a grant from the select board for $250,000, using the first $50,000 of that to buy the unit, and using the remaining $200,000, which we think will cover all hard and soft costs to rehabilitate and really reconstruct our unit and put it back into service as a rental, low income rental unit.
Good. Richard?
Well,
Ask questions from the board. Next
As
steps?
I mentioned the last time Jack and Steve were here, this is something we've worked on for a while. We've actually had several meetings with the bank, and it looked like it was not going to be pulled together, but then Steve and Jack went back in again, sharpened their pencils, took a really good hard look at the unit, have done this other legwork around the the condominium regime of the building, and, I think it's a great idea that they'll as they're proposing, step forward with a management plan. As Steve mentioned last week, it's something that would be very beneficial to the neighborhood. The outside as well as the inside of the premises could use a little bit of attention, and I think it would benefit the neighborhood for the housing authority to be a co-owner here and somebody who's overseeing the overall condition of the property. So management's recommendation here is to join with the housing authority and authorize up to the $250,000, as Steve mentioned, a minimum of which is used as an acquisition price to take the bank out from its position. And the hope is that in putting our heads together, we may be able to save some money on the remaining estimated cost of $200,000 to repair the unit. And I think, we know Jack would manage to the bottom line on that one. And, but we think it gets an active unit back on the market, number one. It takes care of the board's major obligation under its arrangement with the housing authority at 22 Highland. Its major obligation. But
Certainly a significant part of the operation.
but all in all, we think it's one of those win-win situations all around. And the housing authority, hopefully, in due time, would have a new tenant that would be able to occupy the premises, and that would be a good thing. So management recommends it.
I just have a couple quick questions. Is now okay time?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, some of these are really easy ones, and I think we talked about this last time. First of all, thank you so much for your dedication and efforts in general for Winchester in this particular field and endeavor, and also for your creativity with respect to this particular unit. So if for no other purpose than for those listening and also in the audience, so who technically would be the owners, assuming that this was purchased?
The housing authority will be the owner.
Right, are there co-owners, housing authority, and anyone else?
They're not co-owners.
Okay,
There's one owner
okay,
of the second unit,
right, okay.
and they will remain the owner of that unit.
Okay, and then, as the, owner of the unit, would it technically be affordable, capital A? It would be deemed affordable housing, the
Yes.
unit? So there would be, like a appropriate legal, document that would, be filed with the registry, I guess, to that effect? Or there would be town councils involved, or what?
Technically, what happens is Jack would work with our office on the filing with DHCD to determine that it meets the state's housing guidelines for
Right.
low and affordable income.
But affordable, capital A, like affordable housing?
It's
affordable?
low income, as
Low
Jackie
income,
said.
so within the
So
state
not-
guidelines
Okay,
of
So
low
it become a
income.
subsidized.
low
100%.
income, not the affordable housing with the capital A that we usually, that we've been
It would
discussing.
be registered as an affordable capital
Right.
A.
Technically, the property as sold was low moderate. We will be low, that's our charter, that's our, we only rent to low.
But low still qualifies as affordable, capital A?
Yes.
Yes,
If it's deed restricted, and it's going
So
to
it's
be deed
not like
restricted.
section 8 or whatever? So,
Yes.
okay. And and will, town council or who will handle the, legal work to ensure that, the deed, manifests whatever language is required
That would be,
through the housing authority?
it would be Mr. Greco, who works with the Housing Authority on their legal side, and would be
We'll work with the town
I-
to make sure
Mr.
that-
Krieger
Okay.
on our side.
With
Yeah.
art, okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Okay, great, thank you.
I should point out that we do, you may likely be aware, we own four other similar units, what we call managements within our management budget in Winchester, which have low income. So it'd be the same exact idea. We have a management budget, maintenance and everything that comes out of that, a certain
Yeah.
percentage, so it'll just be added to what we have
To
already.
that inventory, sure,
We'd like it to be bigger, but it's, at
Yeah.
the moment,
of course,
it's
yeah.
four units. We have other family units that are state-owned, which we call 705, so these, the management is just the ones that over the years, working mostly with the town, Winchester Housing has acquired. Same, so it'd be under the same
Okay,
management
great.
structure.
Great, thank you.
David?
Is the other unit two, is that, that's affordable too, correct?
Ownership, it's affordable as an owner.
What's that?
It's owned.
It's owned.
But it doesn't qualify as affordable because it's actually low and moderate, and it's allowed to, up to the moderate level of income.
Right,
So I think that disqualifies it until
yeah,
the condominium structure
right.
that these units are part of is redone. And that's a possibility in the future.
That's what I was thinking is it would be great if you
It's not-
had the opportunity to acquire, you know, the other unit, then you control the whole.
Well, we'd be happy to
We'd
do
love
that
to do
if
that.
an opportunity arose.
And is that one restricted on, you know, appreciation, like what it could be sold
Yeah,
at?
That's right.
Right.
There's a formula that changes from year to year, if they were to sell, yeah.
Questions? The other piece of this transaction is we have to retire the lease to 22 Highland,
That's correct.
and where is that?
Art is in the middle of
They're in
drafting
the
that.
process of doing that? Okay, and I believe that 22 Highland was listed as one of the affordable units that we were credited with. I don't, in fact, we're transferring that, or basically moving it over, but I don't know whether that has to be withdrawn and then a new affordable unit registered with the state as part of
Right.
our
I'd have to
transaction. I'm guessing we get rid of that lease and get rid of that affordable
Right.
unit, and then add this unit under the
Sure.
housing authority's
Yeah.
purview.
We'd definitely be adding this unit, I guess we'd have to look back, I'm not exactly sure, we can find out. Since the unit's been empty for 5 or 6 years,
Yeah, the 22 may no longer be listed
Then it
as a
probably,
livable
I would-
unit.
think, but we could check that, whether it actually is on the inventory or not.
If it's in the inventory, it'd probably have to be taken out, because it's not clearly been
But
used.
that's a good question.
Thank you again for carrying through this great opportunity for the town. I appreciate it. And I don't remember if I got an answer to this question last time. Was there an insurance claim made on the unit when the water pipe burst and then that just returned to the bank?
It was, yes.
Okay.
The claim was made and collected by the bank,
Okay.
which is used to basically to gut probably about 80% of the
Okay.
unit, just rip it out to the studs,
Rip it out. Okay.
remove all the damaged material.
So we've also got the benefit of that claim being applied to the
That's
unit
right.
as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we need to, we should vote the allocation of the monies.
Yeah, my recommendation is to vote up to
Okay.
that amount from the Housing Trust Fund, and
Okay, so let me take a stab. The chair would
Subject
accept
to
a motion to allocate 50,000 out of the Selectmen's Trust Fund for the purchase, and up to an additional 200,000 for renovation of the unit, to a total of 250, and that to be allocated to the Housing Authority for the unit at 10 Chester Street.
So
To
moved.
that effect, if that's, amendments to that, clarification is accepted if that's what we need to do.
Yeah, second?
Seconded. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To you and to Richard again, yes, a
Appreciate all your.
good arrangement, takes care of several problems.
Yep, thank you.
And many thanks to Richard Howard for really being really more than the grease.
He's on a roll tonight. This is a third or sort of fourth thing we've had that's been working out favorably.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Good. Okay, we have a hearing, it was advertised for 8 o'clock, it's now a little after that, so I will formally open the hearing. This is a hearing on the transfer of license from Pairings Wine and Food LLC to HPL Inc., doing business as Pairing Wine and Food LLC, so if the folks would join us at the table. Good evening.
Hi.
If you would be so kind as introduce yourself and your, things like that. Tell us what you would like to do. This is a straightforward transfer, I assume.
Sure, let me just get together here. Good evening, Mr. Chair,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Manager, fellow Select Board members. My name is Dennis Benson. I'm the attorney representing HPL Inc., which will be doing business as Pairings and Wine, Pairings Wine and Food. To my right, I have Hugh Lee, and to my left, I have Lon Lamb, who will be purchasing the business. So we're seeking a transfer of a retail package all alcohol license as well as a food vendor license to HPL Inc., DBA Pairings Wine and Food. Just want to give you a little bit of background about my client, Hugh Lee, who will be managing the business. So Hugh's journey began back in Vietnam, back in the early 90s when he worked for Johnny Walker and Hennessy, a bottling plant in Vietnam. He later came to the U.S. on a student visa. He was sponsored by his uncle, who's actually in the room today, back in 2001 to attend Cambridge College, where he graduated with a master's in business. Prior to that, he had graduated from the Economic University back in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, with a bachelor's in business management. He returned back to Vietnam in 2002, and he came back to the United States in 2010, where he began working for John's Liquor store in Winthrop, where he was a store clerk. And soon after that, he began working in the banking industry, both for Citizens Bank and currently for Bank of America as a lending officer. So he spent most of his life working in customer service, sales, dealing with the public, but more importantly, this is an opportunity, economic opportunity for his family that he has been thinking about for quite some time. And it's a very special opportunity. He takes it very, very serious. He plans to operate the business in the same way that both Lori and Ray Schofield, who are actually in the room today, own the business. In the same way that they have been operating the business, they hope to keep a majority of the staff that are there now, maintain the same concept as probably many of you know and have visited the store, that they have many wine and cheese tastings at the store, and they carry many select imported wines as well as spirits. So they hope to continue to build the business in that manner, to service the local community in a very respectful and professional manner. And they look forward to this opportunity and the board's hopeful approval.
Mr. Howard, the staff has reviewed the application and the
Yep.
issues?
None at all?
None, not at all? Okay. Questions from the board members? Any questions
Just,
or comments?
welcome to the community of Winchester. I mean, we have a great and vibrant town center. The store that you're looking to purchase is very close there, and we have a great community, and that's a well-loved business. So congratulations, and thank you.
Anyone else? Mark, any comments, questions?
I'd like to echo my colleagues' comments. First of all, thank you so much for your wonderful representation of the clients. You gave us really very helpful information. And I'd like to echo my colleagues' comments to welcome you to Winchester. Maybe you're already pretty familiar with it. You guys live here, right? Is it Franklin's? In Malden, okay. I couldn't tell about about the address, because I didn't see the town. So I've been to Ho Chi Minh City, and it's an exciting city. It has a lot bigger than Winchester, but in any event, we know you guys are going to be successful because it's a fantastic business. And thank you, current owners, I guess, for investing in Winchester and for you guys believing in Winchester and investing, because it's a great business, and as you pointed out, very well loved by many people in town. So thank you. Thank you for believing in this town.
Just wanted to say the same thing, thank you and welcome. I know a lot of people in town appreciate that you're going to keep this great business going and keep it alive. So just one question for you. On the lease for the property there, when does that expire?
Good question. So we hope to take over the business on November 1st, and the lease with the additional options will expire in 2030. So it's quite some time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's one 5-year option, and the lease right now will run out in 2025.
Okay. Thank you.
No further questions from our board. Open the floor. Are there comments from the public on this license transfer? Okay. Hearing none, I'll close the public part of the hearing, unless there's questions from the board, or take a motion to.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve transfer of license to HPL Inc., doing business as Pairings Wine and Food. The licenses being, you have a victualer's license as well as a
Food vendor license.
package, food vendor license, and the package store license for all alcohol.
Okay,
Second.
seconded. Any further questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays, ayes have it. Congratulations.
If I may, I just wanted to point out that this is actually I generally do work in Boston and Cambridge. I'm from Cambridge, and I just wanted to point out, Mr. Manager, that you have a wonderful staff, very professional, and it was very helpful.
Appreciate that, Council.
I
I'll
think
let them know.
It's great, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback.
And I should note that Laurie and Ray have been at it for a while. They've been at it for all the years that I've been here as manager anyway, and I stop in from time to time. Not often enough, probably, but extremely helpful, and you've been great at running that business.
Yes, Laurie, thank you, welcome.
Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, really? Yes, the same to me.
So I hear you're opening this evening to host us after our meeting. So maybe tomorrow night, oh well, okay. Yeah, we'll call you at home. Good luck. Okay, good luck. Okay, our next order of business is to hear from Diab and the consultants on the initial work on the Winchester Master Plan update. Diab, if you'd like to join us, your guests. Yeah, I'll let you, while they're setting up the projector, I'll let you introduce yourself and your guests.
Hi, my name is Dave Jurius. I'm chair of the planning board, and I apologize for my dress down Friday's appearance. I wasn't expecting to be at the table. As I'm sure you're all
The
aware.
camera's to your back, you're safe.
Oh, but there's that one right
That-
there. You have to always see.
We want to see what your t-shirt says.
Yeah.
Oh, it simply says, never trust an atom, they make up everything. Science nerd, humor. That's where I work. So as you all know, the planning board is setting out on the great journey of getting our new master plan going, and we have contracted a team of experts to help us with that. And today we have Jen Goldson of Jillian Goldson, thank you. And Bob Mitchell. Thank you. Oh, I got it right. Excellent. And so they're going to give a brief presentation on their role in getting the master plan up, the process of developing the plan, getting community input, and then at the end of this process, coming up with a workable master plan. I'll turn over next.
Thank you for having us here. I'm Jen Goldson, and this is my colleague Bob Mitchell. We'll be introducing ourselves in a little bit more detail, but I wanted to let you know why we asked to be on your agenda this early in our process. It's really so that we can all be introduced to each other. And I know that you know this process is going on. I wanted to walk through a bit of the schedule so you know what to expect. And I also want to ask that at certain phases of the project that we come back to you to give you updates and get your feedback on key pieces of the process. But tonight, it's really just an introduction. And so with that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Jen Goldson. I started a small company called Jam Goldson about 12 years ago. And I do community planning and preservation work. Almost exclusively in Massachusetts. And we've assembled this team. As you can see, it's made up of 4 different consultant groups. And one is Bob Mitchell, who he'll introduce himself in a moment. He'll be focusing on the zoning and land use pieces. Tool Design Group has done work in Winchester already, and they're focusing on the circulation, transportation, mobility piece. And then RKG Associates, you'll see Eric Halverson and Jahangir, and they'll be focusing on land use and economic development and public facilities. Now, just because we separated it out with the different consultants doesn't mean we're not thinking of the whole thing altogether. And I want to talk a little bit about the structure that we've put in place to make sure that all these different consultants aren't only thinking about their one little piece. But with that as an introduction, let me have Bob introduce himself.
Thank you, Jen. Well, good evening, everyone. Happy to be here at this initial start of the master plan process. As Jen said, I'm a consultant. I've been doing my own consulting work for the last 8 years in planning, land use, zoning for mostly cities and towns around Massachusetts. Master plans, comp plans, visioning plans, rewriting zoning, all of those kinds of things that every city and town deals with. I was previously the Special Assistant for Sustainable Development for the state of Massachusetts, and then a longtime planning director for the town of Amherst, and planning director and planner in other states. And I've been on faculty at UMass Amherst teaching planning for 20 years. But now I'm hooking up with other planners and planning firms and doing work for a number of communities around the state. And happy to be part of this. And we'll be working, as Jen said, Jen and I have worked together before, so we know each other's work and style, and we liked it. That's why we're back together again.
We always look for an excuse to work together again. Oh, I'm not used to this. Here we go. Hold on. Now you just saw the whole presentation. There we go. You know, I'm a Mac person, and anytime, I'm actually realizing that I can just scroll it too. Yeah, and I'm not used to this kind of anyway. So bear with me if that happens again. So your last master plan, your full master plan, I know there was an effort in 2009, 2010 that wasn't completed, but your last full master plan was done in 1953. And so, as you can imagine, we haven't crunched all the numbers yet, but we're sure that a lot's changed since then in Winchester. And so part of our job is going to be to figure out, well, what has changed? And we'll be going back through your old plan and seeing maybe some things are even still relevant. Sometimes we're surprised by how much is still relevant in terms of goals. And so that's part of the big picture of what we're doing. So what's changed, what remains the same, what do community members in Winchester value about the community, and how do they envision the future? And so just in general, a master plan is really putting you in a position to respond to change. We all know that change happens all the time, and we have a choice as to whether we shape change or react to change. And so a master plan is a way to be proactive around that. Looking at the community's physical evolution mostly, although in master plans we also look at other things, not just physical. We look at services too to some extent, but mostly it's physical based. It's usually pretty long range, 10 to 20 years. And at the end you'll have a document that's meant to help you all and the planning board and all of the other local policy decision makers figure out what kind of policies do we want to put in place, how might we want to change zoning, how can we prioritize the use of our funds and the use of our human resources as well. And the type of master plan that we will provide for you is something I call systems oriented. So I said in the first slide that even though we have these assigned elements for these different consultant groups, I don't want you to think that we're going off into our offices and just sticking chapters together. Part of the process that's really important as planners and for the community is to give you a master plan that really considers your whole town all together and how it works all together. And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be doing a good job for you. So there are statutory elements that we are required to include in the master plan, and that's land use. Those are the elements that I listed before under the consultants. So land use, circulation, economic development, housing, natural, historic, and cultural resources go together in the statute, open space and recreation, and then public facilities and services. There's a couple things I want to say about that. One, it's not as important exactly what you call these elements. These are general areas that you need to focus on. But if you think that some of the names need to be changed, then, you know, some communities call circulation mobility and transportation. Some communities take natural out of historic and cultural and put it with open space and rec. So I just want to point out that there's some level of flexibility, and we'll be working with the community to figure out what are these elements and how can we really get at the heart of what these elements are about. And maybe some of that comes through name changes. The other thing I want you to know is that even though there are these statutory elements, you can also have other themes that come up that really look at connecting those elements. And this is thinking in the systems approach. And these are just examples. These may not be the themes that rise to the top in your community, but when we go through the public engagement and the process of looking at your issues and opportunities, we'll also be thinking about, are there things in this community that are rising to the top that don't fit neatly in one of these elements, but really cross over many elements and can be a way to really tie the plan together. And I don't want you to get hung up on the specific ones that I listed here, I just wanted to give you an example of what I was talking about. And I believe that, each plan should be very customized to the community. So your community might come up with something different. Any questions so far? So the first thing we're going to do, well, actually, I skipped over the first thing. The first thing is we're going to be looking at your existing conditions. And that's what we've already started to do. And so we're going to be looking at existing conditions, where have you come from and where are you now? Looking at change over time, and then trying to look at, well, what does that mean for the future in terms of trends and issues? And so that's the first phase we're in. I'll get more into the phases when we go over the schedule. But then the second thing we do is we help the community envision its ideal future. So we know where you've been, we know where you are, and we know what some of the trends are pointing to and some of the planning issues that are coming up. What we really want to understand from the community is, what does that mean for the future? What do they want their ideal future to be? I'm going to get this. By the end of the presentation, I'll know which way to turn it. And then we look at, okay, so this is your vision, then how can we get there, looking at what goals in each of the elements and maybe some overarching goals as well. And this is where we really look at tensions. So the vision is very idealistic. Sometimes you can see some tensions there, but often it's so idealistic that it looks like a perfect Winchester. But then when you start to figure out, well, what are the goals in each of these areas? And do these goals work together, or are there any tensions between the goals? Sometimes, well, often, we see tensions between wanting to keep the community the way it is and wanting to see the community progress in some way. And that's when we struggle, and it is a bit of a struggle, but it's, in my opinion, it's a fun part of the process where we're really trying to figure out, we don't want to have a laundry list of all these goals that end up conflicting with each other. We want to try to work it out so that these goals can really balance and reinforce each other. Even, the open space goals should balance and reinforce the housing goals, for example. And then we look at how can you achieve the vision and the goals. And this is in the third phase when we really look at, are there specific regulatory strategies? Are there physical improvements or infrastructure improvements? Is there programming and services? How can we look at those goals and the vision and help you figure out how to achieve those in the time frame of the plan? And then after that is pulling it all together, and this is the last phase of the project. And so we will develop a 5-year implementation plan that looks at all of the strategies developed through the planning process. We look at specific municipal actions, scheduled expansion and replacement of public infrastructure facilities. We need to project anticipated costs and revenues. That'd be relatively general. We're not going to go and get quotes for you, but we'll base it on some sound judgments. And then we lay out a process and a schedule, particularly around the regulatory amendments. So these are things that are all required by the statute, and that's why I'm so specific here. The plan requires planning board approval, and it requires filing with the state, with the Department of Housing and Community Development. Those are the only 2 pieces it requires. Although you'll see from the schedule that we've built in a lot of public process and work with the community, work with stakeholders. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I'll be coming back to you at each phase of the plan to keep you up to date. Because although you don't have official approval over the document, I think that you should absolutely be in the know and have feedback at every stage. So let me just pause there and ask if you have any questions or if that makes sense.
I have a few questions, but I'll save them for the.
Okay. Sure. Anybody else? You want me to go through the schedule?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So.
Once we get detoured, you may never get back to it.
Okay. So the schedule, as I said, is laid out into 4 phases. We're in phase 1, which is looking at Winchester yesterday and today, looking at where you've been and where you are now. Phase 2 is January through July, and that's looking at what could Winchester's future be like, and that's the visioning and goal setting phase. And that's the phase that has the most heavy amount of community engagement. And then phase 3 is how should Winchester achieve its vision and goals. That also has a lot of community engagement. but it gets very technical at this stage. And so we also look to convening various stakeholders and boards to help understand the best way to look at strategies. And then the last phase, phase 4, is adoption and finalization. And this is when we put together the implementation plan and we ask for planning board approval at the end of it. So I have a detailed phase 1 and 2 to present to you as well. Phase 3 and 4 will be under a separate contract, and so we haven't fleshed out those phases yet in terms of the exact schedule. The full schedule you can see is about 18 months. And phase 1 is what we're in right now. We had a project kickoff meeting at the beginning of this month with the Master Plan Steering Committee. We are meeting with you tonight for Select Board Presentation number 1, and you'll see there's a Select Board Presentation number 2 in December when we're at the end of this phase, because we'd like to present to you what our findings are from the existing conditions analysis. And then we'd also like to go over the schedule for the following phase, because we'll be gearing up for a lot of public engagement after that. So I won't go through this in detail. You have it in your packet. Happy to answer questions. Maybe I won't get this by the end of it. There we go. And then phase 2 starts in January, and this is really very much focused around community engagement. And so you'll see that we have something called a co-urbanized site. It'll be an online platform that will get up and running. It'll launch in December, but it'll become active during phase 2. And this is where we'll have all the documents related to this project, including the existing conditions report, which will be done by the time we enter this phase. We'll have an interactive map where community members can click on, place a pin on the map and say what needs improvement, what's great already about this community, what's missing, and they can give lots of comments. We can also do different polling questions periodically. And there's a blog that's associated where we can provide updates on a regular basis, links to new information, and the project schedule will be on there. So it'll be very interactive. You can also put little SMS signs around town, like little realtor signs that, on key spots. Could be general questions, it could be specific things, like if there's a vacant site or a redevelopment parcel, you could say, what do you think should go here in the next 10 years? Text it in, and you can text it in, and it goes right into co-urbanized site. So there's lots of different ways we can use this site for folks that may or may not want to come out to a public forum. We may or may not encounter them at our various tabling activities, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but they may have a few moments to text something in, or click some ideas on a map, or answer a polling question, or just want to stay abreast of what's going on with the project. We'll also be doing, you can see it says spring outreach, tabling, and cafe events, mostly through the spring. So we're going to be working with the steering committee on a list of various events that are scheduled to happen. Farmers Market starts up in June, so that's one reason this phase goes into June, so we can catch being at the Farmers Market. There may be other sporting events, other events at the library. We need to work on what that list is, but the idea is there's only a certain core group of folks that usually come out to public forums when you ask them to come to you. And so we do think it's important to have a variety of ways to connect with the project and give feedback. So that's why we have the co-urbanized, the online engagement, but we also have these tabling events where we're coming to them, where folks are already gathered, and we need to think about what types of events are we talking about so that we hit different segments of your population. And at the events, we can have quick interactive exercises, materials they can take away, little business cards with the link to the co-urbanized site, and ways that they can stay engaged in the process. And then you'll see the week of February 26th, with a snow date the following week, we'd like to have our first public forum, which would be a community-wide event. And we would really be getting feedback on what do you see the future of this community, what's great about this community, what could be improved. And it's going to be a very general forum, but it's very important for this first couple months of our process on phase 2 to get large public feedback. And then you'll see that we'll be having some deliverables towards the end of the timeline here, and then presenting a draft to you of the vision and goals that have come out of this process, and talking to you about everything we've learned through the process in July. And so that's the rough schedule, and that's really everything I had other than asking if you have questions. I know I went through a lot. We're pretty detail-oriented and we stick to our schedules, but for snow and that kind of thing, that can happen sometimes. But I wanted to give you a heads up that it is a pretty intense process, and you'll see us around town quite a bit. We'll be running focus groups in Town Hall the first week in October, and so I'll be here, and other members of the consultant team will be running the various focus groups on each of the elements. And it's really meant, it's not a broad outreach at this stage. It's really, let's get folks who really know about these items, these elements, and get them to help us understand what the main issues are for each one as we're writing up these existing conditions. So I'll stop talking. I could probably talk for longer, but I won't.
I have a few questions. So,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. It's so nice of you to make this presentation kind of early on, and we're really grateful for you thinking of doing that and also being here tonight, and your patience with us. And Deeb, thank you for all your service to the town and serving as chair of the planning board, longtime member of the planning board. So I'm predecessor to Deeb. I was on the planning board for 4 years in the last chair, and so we're so appreciative of all your professionalism and all your hard work. And I just have a few questions. So I kind of took off my master plan hat when I joined this board. So only temporarily though, because as any resident of Winchester obviously should be interested in the master plan, so of which we all are. So, but it's really, really great of you guys to kind of connect with us, and we really appreciate it, because if I remember correctly, when we were devising the membership of the steering committee, a selectman is not on it for a lot of reasons, including that it needs to be kind of not too many people on it, and a lot of other sound reasons for that. But so because of that, we really appreciate you guys, integrating us into the calendar, so we just sort of stay abreast of things. So have you worked in other towns recently on these? I'm just kind of curious, what other towns?
Yeah, we're just working with RKG and a team. It's not exactly the same team, finishing up in North Andover. Also working on a different team. There's lots of teams that are formed
Yeah.
around these.
Yeah.
Working with a different team. We just finished up Concord, and I'm also working on Sharon right now.
Great. Okay.
I did
Great.
some visioning work in Tewksbury too.
Yeah,
So,
okay,
and Bob's
great.
worked on quite a number of
Okay.
master plans.
So I was like thrilled with your kind of part of the name, or part of the description of your business as community planning and preservation. So what are some of the preservation, just real quick,
Sure.
kind of items that you
Yeah,
have
my
experienced?
background is actually, I started in historic preservation. That's my first degree, and then I went to planning school.
Great.
And so I've always kept a hand in preservation. I actually have a small arm, it's one person, of my business. My business is very small, it's 3 people, plus a part-time bookkeeper.
Yeah.
So one person focuses, her name is Laura Kreitzer. You'll probably see her from time to time, focuses on historic preservation. We do historic inventory work, National Register nominations.
You guys seem like it's such a great team that you guys, and did you pull together the team? Or
I did.
Yeah, fantastic. Just a couple other ones. Also, I just wanted to say, on whether it's on behalf of the board, per the chair, or just for myself personally as a resident of Winchester, thank you so much for caring. Thank you so much for being part of this team, because it obviously, as you know from your past experience with other towns, makes a big difference, and it means a lot. And you seem to be very sensitive to the fact that people are probably going to have a wide variety of viewpoints, but together we're all, part of the community. And so I can already tell that you guys have a great kind of spirit and sense of really caring for our town, and I just wanted to point that out, and thank you for that. So the other thing I was curious about is, I'm familiar with master plans to some extent. I'm certainly not a planner, legal background, but so do you think with this one, because it's obviously an enormous task, statute requires so many different areas, and I got a kick out of when you were saying what's changed and everything, and that the plan is supposed to be like 10 to 20 years out. Of course, our last one was like 70 years out. But the one that was completed, focusing on town center, which our chair was involved with as well, I believe, that actually was really important for our center business district zoning. And so it just focused on a region, but that was really important towards the future of Winchester. And then there's been other ones that are regional, like the Triangle Master Plan, sort of North Main Street. So I was just kind of curious the way you guys see, obviously, the task list is huge. So I'm not saying it should be or shouldn't, I'm just kind of curious, are you guys, in addition to all these other topics, are you gonna focus on certain regions as well, like say North Main Street?
I guess, I'm not trying to skirt your question, but my answer is it depends. So
Yeah.
I've been involved in North Andover is a good example where we ended up taking deeper dives, we called them.
Mhm.
And one of the deeper dives was geographic based, it was for their downtown area. Another deeper dive had to do with watershed issues, so it was not, I mean, it was geographical in the sense that it dealt with the watershed, but it wasn't a neighborhood per se. So it really, I view this as a journey, and I don't know exactly what, I have a sense of what the end product will look like,
Sure.
but I don't know exactly where the deeper dives will be or where the systems links will end up being.
And of course, that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that the planning board won't be doing those things as well, either simultaneously or in addition, or if it's not possible. So
Right.
it's not mutually exclusive, I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, but can I just answer
Yeah,
more part of that? I already get a sense that the North Main Street area is gonna end up being critical for us to look at.
Near and dear to my
And
heart, and I
so-
think Dieb's as
yeah,
well. We'd love to
yeah.
at least beautify that area. Those businesses have committed to this town, fantastic businesses, but it just seems like there's kind of silo developments, and it'd just be great if there was, just maybe more trees and sort of something that sort of organizes the width of the road a little bit more coherently, so that it looks like the town is also, acknowledging that investment by all those businesses and the importance that it is to Winchester, like an extension of town center.
Right, and that's the type of example where you could use that geographic area and weave it into lots of elements. You have economic development.
And zoning.
Land use, zoning,
Zoning is-
and
yeah.
transportation. I think all of those will be important elements to
Great,
think
so
about.
maybe that would be a deep dive. Okay, two other quickies.
If I could
Yeah,
just add one thing, the first phase of this project will help answer that question, because in the first phase is when things start bubbling up in terms of priorities, of
desires.
concerns, of issues. They could be geographic, they could be topical, and then as we move forward, then
Sure.
we'll be analyzing,
Right,
the priorities and whatnot, and
Right.
which ones we can take a deeper dive on, or which ones might be sort of on the list of the next list to do for
Right.
the town
right,
itself, or
exactly.
the planning board to take the lead on this section of that topic.
Right.
So
And what-
that'll
yeah.
play out that way.
Right, and while town center, of course, is never done, if you will, because of all of the interests and priority here and also challenges, because of the other kind of focused master plan and because of the town center zoning, that though affords the opportunity to grow that into this other area we're talking about. Two other quickies. What does co-urbanize mean, and how is it relevant to this? I don't know that term.
Sure, Co-Urbanize is an online platform. It's a company that made this platform, and that's just the brand, that's their name.
Okay.
There are other types of services. It's a subscription service,
Okay.
so it's a private company that I subscribe to for a project like
Okay,
this.
excellent. And last question, focus groups. If you guys are interested in any of our views, should we indicate an interest, or would you kind of wait and see if you want any of our involvement, or because I'd love to be part of a
Yeah, I
focus
think
group
some
if
of the
possible.
select board is involved in some. I don't, the planner and planning board and steering committee worked on a list
Okay.
for us, and I don't know exactly who's on it and who's not.
Okay, great.
But there's also the possibility, especially if you have a specific interest in something,
Yes.
to just reach out to me. And
Okay.
I've also been doing telephone interviews, or I can put you in touch if it's not a category that I'm focusing on. I can put you in touch with the person who is.
Okay, that'd be great. And I think I'm technically liaison to the planning board anyway, but that sounds great. I'll communicate with you offline. Thank you again, for all you guys, for being here.
Any comments? David?
I'll throw this out there, one of the concern that I have, I don't know how it's all gonna play out, but, so we're in the middle of, the creation of the housing production plan. And within that, there's a fair amount of discussion about, zoning changes, land use and whatnot, so I'm just throwing it out there for a topic of discussion. I don't know how that will play out with two plans.
No, it's important, it's an important question to ask. So I have on my schedule on the 9th to go and observe the presentation that MAPC is giving, I think, to the planning board. I'm actually not sure who, yeah.
It's a joint
To both
meeting.
of us.
It's a joint
Yeah.
meeting, okay. So I'll be in the audience, I don't have a role there, I just wanna hear what the discussion is, and I wanna see if there's public comments and
We actually have it
discussion.
on our agenda tonight, too.
I saw that when we were sitting in the audience.
Hopefully we
Yeah.
will, every meeting for a while.
Oh, okay, good.
I don't know, per the chair.
Okay, very good. And so the answer is we want to understand what the issues are, and then at the end of the day, I assume the plan will be approved soon. It sounds like it's in its final stages.
Many groups are just discussing it for the first time.
Oh, okay, so what do you think that the general timeframe might be? Is it,
With all due respect, I
We'll
don't think
find
that
out
was
in the next several
necessarily,
weeks.
yeah, I don't think that was necessarily Dave's question. I think, if you don't mind, I think his question was more geared towards the subject matter and how that sort of overlaps and that sort of thing, not, I don't think, correct me if I have
You're
this
doing
wrong.
a
So
great
the,
job.
the goal, so the plan has been open for public, the housing production plan has been open for public feedback since the middle of August. That's when we published it on our website, and we already had 2 community meetings over the last, Diab, help me out here, you were part of our working group,
Don't trust my memory.
what, it's 9 months, so, the goal is for October 9th to be when the 2 boards, as you know, housing production plan has to be adopted by both the planning board and the select board. So the goal is for October 9th for both boards to adopt the plan at that meeting, and then, for submittal to DHCD after that.
so we would view a very recent plan that was approved, even simultaneous to when we're starting, as being public policy that you've already vetted. And we would look to incorporate the findings of that plan into the housing element and into the land use and zoning pieces. The master plan really looks more broadly than a housing production plan would. So a housing production plan, I haven't read the draft, but typically I've written lots of them, and they typically focus on affordable housing and getting eventually to your 10%, or at least getting your numbers to meet safe harbor. And so a housing element of a master plan is really looking at residential uses in a very broad sense, and affordability and the SHI is really only one part of that. If it was an older plan that was, let's say, expired or a number of years old, we wouldn't necessarily look at that policy as being untouchable or undiscussable because of an age of something. But if it's a brand new plan that you're potentially adopting in a couple of weeks, we would take that and say, these policies have already been decided, and then we'd incorporate them to the extent it's appropriate, but build off of that.
Yeah, so the goal was that the housing production plan would address and we knew that the master plan was coming after, so we did have to work a little bit of the timing, that it would address the SHI, right, up to 80% income. But the housing production plan does not address much other than just a needs assessment on the 80 to 120%. But as you mentioned, yes, the goal is the SHI and how to get there, so.
But I'll just comment, because it'll tee up our discussion later. This particular draft includes a lot of other topics as well that don't go to just what you said. So that's why having an open discussion about those things and actually what, iteration that there's a commonality about is something that I'm assuming will be discussed. So,
David? So following up on, what I brought up, I guess this is a conflict that I have in that, I look at, we're hiring you as the experts to come in and create the master plan, and, rather than accept the housing production plan, in a perfect world, we should be relying on, your expertise and your thought process as to what may be good or not good for the town as it relates to land use and zoning. So, rather than accept that, the HPP, one of my concerns is, to have the input of you folks, because it may not, what's in the HPP may be something that you would not advise, or you would be advising something else. So I see a little bit of a conflict in those.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So I think that, what I would suggest is that if you think that the HPP is representative of a, community process and looking to address the needs that you see in the community, that you would consider approving it even ahead of our work, because it is a regulatory tool. And I don't know if I have an idea, but I don't know for sure if you'll get projects that will help you get to safe harbor. And so I wouldn't want you to hold up that protection that the housing production plan provides you.
You should know, though, if you haven't read it, though, it includes a lot of other topics, with all due deference to my colleagues who are part of it, other than just the safe harbor topics. And so those other topics are, many people have a wide variety of opinion about, and whether or not they should be included in this plan is, I guess, was an interesting strategic decision that was made. But they may be topics that require a lot more thought and community engagement in the town, because they bear on so many other things, like, for example, zoning.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, excuse me. I think there's a number of options that we're gonna become aware of and present to the town on this issue. So, like you said, with the other topics, particularly with the other topics in the housing production plan, we may, from our public outreach, find some different,
Exactly.
different recommendations or different concerns than shows up in the HPP, which we would then, present to the town as, okay, well, your HPP says this, and this is what we're hearing, what we're finding out, and it's not exactly aligned. We may, on our own, because of our own professional experiences, say, well, the HPP is recommending this, but we have found that, that's not
Right, because
really
you're
the best
looking
way
at
to
all
do
these
it.
other topics
So I
as
think
well.
we're gonna have
And
to.
that's exactly, that's what I'm looking for, is the third-party independent set of eyes, because, the HPP may be geared towards, creation of affordable housing, but I'm looking for your group to be looking at the big picture based upon your collective experience, what is overall good for the town from a master plan perspective, which may, in some cases, not align with the HPP. So that's something that I see as a little bit of a conflict, and hopefully can be ironed it out.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. The HPP can also be amended at any time. So if we do come to a point where we're finding something different, or there are other elements that are informing it, you can open that up and amend it if you need to create a consistency.
Yeah, I just want to say from the planning board's perspective, these are all very complementary processes, because they are essentially exploring different things. But we've always felt that the master plan will incorporate all the good ideas, we're happy to steal, and hopefully work out all the kinks, because the master plan is for a much longer term view. So where the HPP and the master plan might come into contention, then both of those are living documents that will change, and we'll just make sure that they're not.
Well, I would just note, I think those are brilliant comments, but that many things, people have a wide variety of viewpoints on. And that, part of your process is sort of figuring out what are the sort of like community goals or that sort of thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody wouldn't necessarily want to have their voice heard in a town meeting kind of context if there's a zoning change on a warrant article. And that they not have that voice taken away because of some public policy that got passed, 8 years prior. So, they are living in dynamic things, and they do affect people's viewpoints who live here, real residents who pay taxes. And, so anyway, so it seems like in some ways, kind of even just the verbs that are used, like to consider things, sort of is more constructive and meaningful than they have to do things, that they become policies or something. Like important, values or things to consider in any given situation. as opposed to you have to do this because somebody said you had to 6 years ago, who wasn't even necessarily envisioning whatever a warrant article zoning change might be.
Right, yeah,
Mike,
that's a
you had-
good point.
Mike, I'm sorry, Mike, you had a question?
Yes, I just want to say thank you for coming in, giving us a path along the master plan here with you. And I will say, Ms. Goldson, you're very highly regarded amongst a lot of the stakeholders, particularly in the housing community here. So I'm glad that you were able to connect with the planning board on this project. And we are currently working on a needs assessment project as well as a housing production plan. I think these all just inform probably what you're doing in a larger scale. When we adopt the housing production plan, as you said, I mean, it's a living document, and it doesn't preclude us from making other decisions down the road. It just kind of puts a framework in place so we can start addressing these housing needs really in a more aggressive way. We are at 1.9% currently for our subsidized housing inventory, so it's it's necessary that we move forward. And I think housing is probably going to stand out as one of the major needs of the master plan to effectuate. So thank you very much. I just wanted to say appreciate it.
A couple observations, thoughts. Well, we're really just starting on our board to discuss the housing production plan. What MAPC has delivered to us is, in my view, a really good inventory of lots of goals, objectives, strategies. It's not really at this point been shaped into what I would think of as a policy plan or implementable plans, and I think we're going to have to look at that. It may satisfy the regulatory requirement that DHP needs, but in terms of sort of a coherent plan or options for plan, it's not quite there in my opinion. So, but that's what we're going to look at in the next couple of weeks and see where we can get to. The other observation is Winchester does its master plan updates once about every 50 years. As you can see, 1900, 1950, 2000, we took a stab at it. We bit off 4 pieces then in the late 1990s, 2000. The primary piece was the town center update, which took 5 or 7 years to implement, and it just exhausted us. I think it's been very good. There's the 2 other things that flow out of that that were really clear during the 2000 update was it would be very useful to move the learning curve from that up Main Street into these general business districts that Jackie and Dia have been talking about, which need badly to be updated. We have a huge hole in the zoning of the other districts, which really have not been touched since the 50s and in some cases since the 1900s. There's great reticence to touch them because you get into people's housing and things like that. But we have provisions for the district outside the town center that haven't been really looked at. We've dealt with it in piecemeal by using overlay district techniques, some of which work, some of which are dead, things like that. I would, the other couple things, I would encourage you to talk with the members of the board here, probably individually. We have about a dozen initiatives going that either through staff or through here that I think would be very useful. I think Diab's been participating. There's a buildings condition survey for all the town buildings. It's been the cost replenishment that's available. We have set up an advisory committee for traffic and transportation that's now functional. There's a road book that documents what's going on there. We're just about to complete a fields master plan, a demand capacity study across the fields would plug into the recreation piece. The production plan we've talked about. Mike mentioned the needs, sort of a social needs, really focused on a lot of our elderly pieces. There's a water, sewer, stormwater, MS4 effort that our engineering group is going to pull down a pretty comprehensive sort of plan for that. The schools have completed a recent master plan, and we had the Donahue Institute look at some of the things. One of the things we've learned, and then there's a number of us are working on a financial outlook, the next 5 or maybe 10 years, but what's the need for overrides to support operating budgets and capital improvements. A couple of things we've learned in the process of those. So there's a huge amount of information available. We get it through Diab, but I think each of us has been sort of spearheading some of those issues. So I would say it would be very useful. We don't have to participate in the group, but you ought to pick our brains to figure out what's going on in all those pieces. One thing I would caution you against, MAPC's data, when we looked at it in 2000, and again, when we've looked at it in the school master plan, tends to be sort of out of date and averaged, and really, we tend to be an outlier on things like school growth and things like that compared to the rest of the state. Their process is to massage all the data, so the Bostons don't lose too badly. It would be double check that data a little bit before you use it. The other experience we had in the 2000 cycle was that we spent, and the consultant at the time did a very good job, spent an immense amount of time gathering and grinding through data, which made very little use in the end. I mean, it's, you know, so we got books upon books upon books of data and charts, never made a whole lot of use of it. The critical process was discussion with people in the boards. The town runs on a lot of volunteer boards, and getting that group convinced that these changes, you know, are necessary and which direction and how is really the critical thing. And I'm sure you're painfully aware in Massachusetts, master plans, nice sweet words, nothing enforceable, right? So in the end, if the community doesn't believe in what comes out of the master plan, it's on the shelf and doesn't go anywhere. So I think your, you know, phase 2, phase 3 discussions of, you know, working with the town and basically helping build a consensus on where to go is much more important than the data needs and the other pieces on that. So that would be the critical things to do. I think we look forward to do it. There's Winchester has a long history of building, each group doing, you know, what you call some of these shining silver silos, and some of these kind of, they're beautiful pieces. Everybody does a lot of work and nobody ever talks to anybody because they're too busy. And I think it's one of the opportunities in the master plan is to begin to get at the kind of issues that Dave was flagging, you know, where does this plan jive with that one and 4 or 5 other pieces, because it's complex enough to really warrant a lot of attention, so good luck.
If you want to sit in on another rollout, I know there's only so many contractual visits in your contract, but that needs assessment will be rolled out to a concentrated group of stakeholders on October 23rd. Across the parking lot here at the Jenks Center, which is the senior center that the town uses, but October 23rd from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, so. You would both meet a lot of the people that you would end up talking to along the way in your planning, and also get a first look at the recommendations that are contained in the needs assessment that has been authorized.
Okay, thank you.
18 months would be great. Winchester likes to debate everything for at least 5 years, so this will be a record.
We have been called a deliberative community.
That's distinctly the case. Jackie will probably agree, yes.
Yeah, can I just ask one last question? So, Dia, this is to you. So you'll probably be making a presentation at town meeting and maybe making like a quick update about the master plan. Would you, I don't need an answer now, I'm just kind of like floating the idea if you guys haven't already thought about it, but you probably have, to either have these wonderful professional folks sort of do like a 5 or 10 minute presentation to town meeting, or it always seems like it's helpful to make sure town meetings like super informed, even though they're not the ones who are gonna be approving it, but just they're obviously stakeholders, and I think they seem to really enjoy hearing, every time we made a presentation to town meeting about just learning more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the planning board and I really feel a responsibility to keep the town meeting up to date. They do represent the town, they are footing the bill for this.
Right,
So
exactly.
I will certainly be making a presentation. It's a question as to whether we should bring consultants in this first town meeting, or maybe in spring when there's
Or
more.
maybe
when
just show the
there's-
timeline or something.
Yeah, so it's just, we haven't discussed that in detail.
Yeah.
It's something, obviously, is.
I just think that town meeting loves hearing, well, I don't know, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but just about planning, they seem interested, because it's their, like, you know, physical community, so.
Yeah, yeah.
I just
so,
encourage you guys to do something, sounds like you are already planning to.
Thanks.
Anything further, if not? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to the answer.
We're here every Monday night if you want to come by.
You can also watch us on TV
If you're desperate.
if you have insomnia, you know.
Does anybody else want to come?
Sure, sure, give us several.
Yeah.
I should have filled this up before I come, I have 2 more left.
We'll fight over
You
it.
can fight over that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can take pictures of it. We can take a picture of it. I have a
Yes.
scanner.
Can you do? Okay,
I can just
thank
scan.
you. Thank you, Dia.
Thank you. Okay. 3 things to
Actually,
bring up.
3.
Next,
We
how
have
do we want to
G2.
start a discussion of the housing production plan?
What about 22 Highland, G2?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
22
G2.
Highland, we need to go back, I missed that. My apologies, okay. Richard?
So in the packet is the information you saw last week as well, but we've teed it up for a vote for this week to acknowledge the award, and that will also touch off our negotiations with the respondent.
Highland? Yeah.
So you see the votes as prepared by town council. So assuming you agree that we're looking to move forward on that transaction, we'd advise that you adopt the votes.
So we're looking forward to Mariano reading it.
That's the way
He's
it goes.
he's pretty quick about it, yeah.
Lance and I did have a meeting with some of the neighbors last week to kind of catch them up to speed on where things were at, and
How'd that
because
go?
it went well. It went very well, and I think that they
They
were.
were polite, and they didn't throw anything at us.
Yeah.
How'd Mike, how'd the owner at the top there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, everybody's position is similar, but they, you know, realize that we're, you know, caught in a tough spot. So I think because of the nature that our negotiations, you know, had to be somewhat private due to the legal nature of it, we didn't catch everybody up to speed on where things were. So they felt that there was a huge jump between when we last presented at
Okay.
town meeting and where we are now. So
Okay.
I think they were,
That was
you know,
good you guys went there.
we had to, you know, we explained the culvert and
Two things that-
what the project really entailed and kind of the evolution of it. So I think that they got it, and, you know, we're, as Lance said, they didn't throw anything at us, so.
Yeah, I think we made reasonably clear to them that these are all preparatory steps, and if town meeting were to vote yes, then you go ahead. If for any reason town meeting says no, then none of these preparatory steps would carry, you know, would stop the process.
And even beyond that, if it did advance, I'm not necessarily advocating, I'm just saying theoretically if it advanced, then it would be great if they were part of the planning board process for subdivision. And we have extensive rules and regulations, and as you guys are aware, and the neighbors' feedback would be really important.
And they did participate the
Exactly.
last time around when
Right, exactly.
planning board had it under
Yep.
consideration, so.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
we will also, be responsible for a development agreement that would parallel what can be done within the subdivisions would be the planning board's responsibility. Things that fall outside of that, you know, such as the agreement for the culvert and other things, which could include some design requirements. That would be something that we would have to negotiate in parallel, so.
And I think that they felt better that we would maintain a level of oversight of the project through the development agreement, and it wasn't just kind of, you know, handing it off to the developer, so I think it went well. But we've got to vote on this, right?
Yeah, there's
Two votes.
There's
Sure.
two pieces in your packet that
Mr. Chairman, I move that we record the following vote of the Town of Winchester Select Board, that at a duly noticed public meeting of the Town of Winchester Select Board on September 24th, 2018, the board voted as follows with respect to the real property that is subject of the request for proposals for the purchase of Lot A and Lot B of Highland Avenue, comprising a portion of the parcels identified on the Town of Winchester's Assessor's Map, lots 2-179 and 2-180. The property Section A, in response to the proposal for the purchase of the property submitted on September 4th, 2018 by 5 Points Development LLC, the successful proposer, and upon the recommendation of the town manager to issue a notice of award for the disposition of the property to the successful proposer on the terms and conditions set forth in the form of the notice of award presented to the select board at this meeting and approved by this vote. And Section B, to authorize the town manager to execute a notice of award for the disposition of the property to the successful proposer as aforesaid.
Second.
Any further discussion? There's a second piece to this, but that's the first one.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion? No, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we record the following vote of the Town of Winchester Select Board, that at a duly noticed public meeting of the Town of Winchester Select Board on September 24th, 2018, the board voted as follows, that the board has determined that advertising under general laws, Chapter 30B, for the town's acquisition of the following parcel of real property will not benefit the governmental body's interest due to the unique qualities of the property. The land off Highland Avenue, identified as Area C on the sketch plan here attached hereto and incorporated herein as Exhibit A, containing approximately 6,099 square feet, being a portion of the land identified as Town of Winchester's Assessor's Map Lot 2-178, the property. Specifically, the property contains land in a highly advantageous central location and is uniquely suited for combination with existing town-owned land that abuts the property, which would allow the town to use the property for the purpose of creating affordable housing units.
Second.
Further discussion or question? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays, the ayes have it. Okay, it's my understanding, Richard, and correct me, that this then
We'll contact our attorneys
Yep.
and proponents' attorneys.
and they can begin provisional discussions with the planning board on the subdivision at this point.
Correct.
Nothing then happens until the town meeting actually approves
Correct.
the land swap and the rezoning, I believe, okay? Good, okay. So the last three items we wanted to discuss housing production plan, warrant articles, and national grid. Let me make two suggestions. One, on the warrant articles, rather than dragging through them late at night, Richard reminds me that in previous years, we've set a morning session. It's basically, it's a working session, because we don't make any decisions on the warrant articles at that time, but just to chew through the details and understand them and make sure they're drafted correctly. So, rather than do the warrant articles tonight, question to the board members is, could we schedule, sort of a working meeting in some morning, preferably toward the end of this week, because time is ticking on these, to get started on discussing these. Is that, so I
Yeah,
guess the
Friday morning.
first bid is Friday morning possible,
Yeah.
for people. We will provide as much coffee as you need. So this would be basically a working session, not a decision section. And we would take we had a list of about 6 or 8 of them, some of which will probably vaporize, I think, but others.
At a 9 o'clock meeting, unless we want to do it before that.
Yeah, I've got an early meeting
Uh,
Friday morning.
We'll do it like 5 AM, if you want to.
so a little bit much.
I'm up.
Yeah, no, thank you. Other dates this week, Thursday morning? Or we could do an evening meeting too, if anybody has,
Yeah, I can't on
Can't do
Thursday morning, no. I can't do it before Friday.
okay, can't do it before Friday.
I'm traveling.
Okay,
Monday morning,
Monday morning, following the first, anything? How
8:30?
does it disrupt?
I'm
is
out
it-
next week.
You're out next week?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so we can't wait for you, but, the rest of us, could we chew through the Monday morning? Make a nice long day, start with a select board meeting, end with a select board meeting. You could have lunch in between.
I have a question. So if Mariano's out next week, and I think you said not this week either,
I can do Friday.
maybe Friday.
We can do Friday,
Friday
and I
morning.
can,
What time's your meeting get over?
well, it's at 9, and
I was just gonna say I could do this Wednesday morning, but anyway.
Local.
yeah.
So we could promise you that the
We won't do
substance of the
anything
stuff would be
useful
an
for you.
hour, so if you started at 8, we could get you out of here.
We could at least bring up the ones that you're,
Yeah, but I'm not good until probably 9,
Oh, I see.
so either way.
Is anybody available this Wednesday morning?
I could do that.
I'm good.
You have to post though.
Uh, that's right.
It's
Yeah.
too late to post.
Too late to post. Well, do you wanna do Friday at,
Well, you could continue this meeting for the purpose of,
yeah, except that's probably,
Well, it's on our agenda.
that's right.
well, I suppose,
Technically,
continue this.
procedurally, you can do that.
Procedurally, we can do that.
I could do this Wednesday morning, or else, I don't know about Friday, especially where there's different
Okay,
times.
well, how about if we can continue this meeting and it's really picking up this warrant article, our exam, David, is that good for you?
But
It's good for
early,
me.
And you said you
8:30 at
can't
the
do it.
latest,
Oh, you can't do Wednesday?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
But that's
and
fine.
he's out next
You
week.
can do 8:30?
Or you guys can meet
I'm
Friday,
not-
you guys
I'm
can meet
not gonna
Friday,
Get out of that meeting.
or you guys can meet Friday, it's either he's missing Wednesday, or I'm missing Friday, so
Yeah.
if you guys.
We
want-
could do, well, we could do that, we could do one of those.
Is it gonna take more than one meeting, or will there
Well, this would
be
be a first
necessary to
go-round
space
on
it
it,
out?
yeah.
Okay.
Eventually we'll have motions and backgrounds and.
Yeah, I mean, in this week, yeah, just had a, written, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I mean, a lot of the stuff we probably don't need to
It's just,
discuss.
it's a first pass at
Right.
the structure of these things.
Mike, are you suggesting we actually look at something first?
Well, just that
No, that's
Yeah.
not.
we do that.
That seems
Yeah.
like a good suggestion to me.
Yeah.
Well, no, the problem is that then the staff says, well, you haven't given us you haven't given us much direction on this particular topic, so
We're
that's
used to that,
a
though.
virtuous circle of our looking at it first.
Wing it.
I think it'd be
Oh,
worse for them if
works
we
out.
do get the direction.
When-
Well, we could, the option would be to meet Wednesday morning and start on ones, and we'll wait on the ones that turn out available.
What time Wednesday morning are you looking at? Because I can dial in for if it's early.
8:15, 8:30, I don't know what your,
I'm good either.
So I can dial in,
8:30
I can dial in.
Yeah.
If it's that early, I can dial in. I'll be in central time zone, so.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jackie,
Earlier the better, and I'm
So-
assuming it'd be like an hour and a half max.
8, good for you, Mike? Can you get up?
Yeah,
there?
I mean, I'm up anyway, just to drop,
Kids
daughter
are-
off, so,
okay. Tell them to tell them to get up really early, okay,
well, you can only drop them off, at a certain time. I
okay.
can't drop her off at like 5 AM.
Well, so we wanna start at 8 or 8:15? So what works? 8 or
8, say 8.
Eight's fine, that's fine.
Eight, okay, so let's try Wednesday at 8, and we'll, so when we close this meeting tonight,
Recess.
remember just to
Oh,
continue it?
recess.
Yeah, okay, so 8 AM
Yeah.
here,
And
okay.
then the idea is another one in a couple weeks.
Yeah, not even a couple of weeks, yeah, the following week, maybe to clean up some of this stuff, because we need to get these,
A week from Friday would be good, but.
Yeah, Friday the 5th.
Friday the 5th.
That what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work.
8:30
Okay.
in the
Yeah,
morning.
Friday the 5th in the morning.
Friday the 5th,
I don't know, maybe.
maybe.
Okay, well, we'll see what
I'm
we get.
supposed to be away, but
Well, these are working,
Don't
meetings.
change that.
We will eventually have to review all the language of the warrant article and the motion and
Okay.
everything. And if, we can do that literally the night before we take a position on them
Okay.
before the meeting, but it helps to hammer them out ahead of time.
right, I could call in.
Okay,
Okay.
National Grid, we may wanna continue that until the next meeting.
Yeah.
Richard,
I have
some
a
updates, and there's,
Brief
we
update
have
on that.
material, but
So we did find additional counsel. We'll use Bill August to supplement a review that Wade Welsh has provided to the board. And Bill is a very, very good resource on this, I believe, but he can't have his analysis and either opinion or recommendation, whatever we'll call it, to you before the 1st, Monday the 1st. So that's why we couldn't have it in your packet tonight. So I'm recommending that we do that, where we are getting some inquiries about single-family residential permits again. Well, I don't know if any of that will have come forward before the 1st for consideration. We could always put those on for your consideration that night, and/or we could, under the vote that you've previously taken, maybe try to short-circuit that effort and issue some new street opening permits with the understanding that the requisite safety measures that you've referenced in your proclamation are in order and in place, satisfactory to the DPW director in our office. But if they can be held until we can report to you in unison on the topic and on the permits for Monday night, we would do that as well, so.
I thought we were going to also hire somebody, at least on a, somewhat of a temporary basis or consultant basis.
Yeah, I don't wanna have to take on an expense that we don't need, so I think in combination with some of the research that Bill is doing
Yep.
and some stuff that we've come across in the meantime, we may be able to put a set of minimum baseline standards and criteria together that really kind of reflect the regulatory framework at the federal level and at the state level, so it's kind of.
Who would have oversight over that, though?
That would, to determine that, that any contractor met those, that would be myself and Jay in the first instance, and then you ultimately, as a board. That's the way your proclamation reads, that it comes to you for approval. But we would vet all of that information in the first instance and either reject outright or come forward to the board with a recommendation.
Well, to see what Bill says, I guess.
Yeah.
I was gonna suggest maybe that we see if we can resolve the issue on Monday based on what Bill's suggesting, because my initial understanding is he'd suggest some wording some changes to the wording that would probably establish both what we can regulate and to what extent we could, and we can then figure out whether we wanna go back and have it just come to the board or go back to Richard, or if they're, straightforward ones, go to Richard, if there's complex ones, come to us, so.
Has he worked with some of the other communities that adopted this?
Bill?
moratorium? Yeah.
No.
No? Okay.
But we've sent them that information, and I wouldn't wanna give his opinion, but you should hear it from him, but I think he would tell you he'd be concerned about whether or not they've overstepped their authority under the state law. It's this balance that you heard that night from Wade about preemption and the requisite amount of oversight that you can have at the local level around these safety items, And I think Bill may end up trying to fine tune the language that you passed that night so that he felt comfortable that you were on safe ground. Maybe even more so than Wade did at the time, about the language that you not the original language, but the language that you ultimately stitched together. So I think, short story would be, I think there'd be a little bit of progress on the topic so that you would feel more comfortable saying whatever it is you ultimately say, and that we then have a process and a procedure in place that is a good thing for DPW and our office to live by.
So I think we've covered what we can cover tonight, because we don't have any new information, but I would carry it over to the next meeting, and presumably we could debate it and resolve it at that point. Dave?
Yeah, I would just say, Mr. Chairman, I'm very encouraged to hear that the town manager and the DPW director seem to have stepped up to the plate and have created some additional safety measures, oversight, and very pleased to hear about the progress of those plans. What I would respectfully request is, maybe pending the second opinion, is could we just get an insurance statement of compliance? Just again, I have that concern for the town and boards as well. So whatever we commit to, if we can get that.
We can try to roll that topic into it, right?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so
And we have reached out, we've talked with National Grid Management as well and told them about the board's concerns and about the level of assurances that the board/management would need in any circumstance where there was a new street opening.
What was their reaction to that?
They understood, and I think they, in some small way, appreciated it, actually.
Did you get a sense of, are there multiple unions? Is it just that we fall within a geographical location with the unions that are on strike and others aren't on strike, or?
No, well, you're dealing with their union, the steelworkers who have made their presentation to you, but it's for that.
There's no unions on strike. They're being locked out by National Grid.
Forgive me.
Yeah,
Forgive me.
Lockout.
okay.
What I meant was lockout, but I mean, it's
It's
not
the
that.
one steelworkers union.
Right, it's not that all the unions who work for National Grid are locked out, is that correct?
No, they have other unions that don't do this work that aren't locked up, right? this is a particular contract within their organization.
Yeah, and maybe for the first, we can, I mean, you'd asked last time, could we get some information on the network and some, I presume there's a map about which company manages which section of the network and how they're connected, just, to the question of Lawrence and,
This is sort of a totally separate topic,
yeah. but we could-
actually, but this was just to make sure that we do our job and make sure that any of those issues that occurred in Lawrence and,
Yep.
and Andover, which was a different company, but that.
Yeah, that was
have
the other thing that
Somebody sort of
we're,
look things over to make sure we don't seem to have those same issues.
I think one of the questions.
There's
we've
really
asked-
two separate questions.
One of the questions we've asked Mr. August is, you know, how do we clarify the statement we made, and is there anything else we should add to it to make sure, in light of the Lawrence and, you know, North Andover issues, that we're really doubling down and making sure that they're managed safely?
Well, I think that we had discussed having, you know, somebody have additional oversight. I mean, I think that Jay from the DPW had said that they don't have the experience to provide the analysis of whether or not
in the trench.
the work is being done in a proper way and consistent with regulations. So, you know, we seem to be, somewhere a decision was made to do an end run around that. I mean, I don't know why, I don't know, you know.
I don't know that we made an end run around it, I don't know that we have the resources, I mean.
I
don't
think
you
the
want
other
to
As
be-
far as issuing permits?
As far as issuing
You mean to
permits.
be-
No,
Yeah.
so we
So-
would, what we said,
Yeah.
have said, and what we expect is that we get the credentials of anyone who would be working on a new line installation to assure ourselves that the minimum criteria, the baseline criteria for certifications and experience were in place. So both the contractor who would be doing certain work within the trench on behalf of National Grid, and also the team that Grid would expect to be observing and signing off on the compliance of the installation. So we need
Okay.
all that. We typically wouldn't get that, but now we're insisting that that information be supplied in advance.
And just for the
Okay.
record, my comment
Permit
last
recognition.
meeting was totally separate from that proclamation.
Yeah.
It related, because.
The stressing of the system, so.
Exactly, which I
Yeah.
think was a pressure
Yeah.
issue or something,
Yeah.
so, but that somebody look at that, since we're not that, I don't know if these lines are kind of geographically connected or whatever, that we
Yeah, the
as a board do our
systems
job.
are,
and-
systems are
Systems all connected.
essentially the same, the way they
Yeah.
operate underground, you know. It's a question of what personnel are pressurizing,
Yeah.
and, you know, Commonwealth seems to have had a particular series of
Very
unfortunate
sad.
coincidences that
Yeah.
led to what it did. But, yeah, we will certainly confirm with Grid that those kinds of things aren't
Great,
either in existence or.
excellent.
And I know that, you know, like the city of Boston, for instance, is doing exactly what you suggested last meeting and kind of evaluating their infrastructure and
Oh,
seeing
good.
if there is
Yeah.
exposure there. So I think that it's a good suggestion for us. I mean, we can't take on all of this at once, but certainly to keep the conversation going about evaluating our lines and what is there.
I mean, in some ways, maybe the state's doing it also, but it just seems like at our level, we should make sure that we're doing the best we can
We can ask at a
to
minimum.
prevent something like
Yeah.
that in our town, correct, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So, we'll carry this agenda over, carry this item over to the next agenda, and we'll see Mr. August's memo, we'll get some information on insurance, and there's available some basic information on the network and which portions are managed by National Grid and others. I mean, ours is obviously managed by them, but they're all interconnected, then. So, okay. Housing production plan, you're good back, okay. We wanna take a 2-minute recess to stand up?
Not really.
Not really. Okay.
We just
Wait,
want-
I think
unless-
Mariano
unless
was a
you guys do.
volunteer to come back, so we'll wait for him to come back.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll start. I just thought it was a good idea to
Well, I
start
was
having
gonna
this.
ask him to
Okay,
just give us an overview of where
Sure.
they've been, where they're going, and where we are in the
Excellent.
process, and then we can,
okay,
and
Thank
I
you.
would assume we wanna talk about this, for several nights leading up to the
Yeah, I think
October
so.
thing, so we don't have to cover everything tonight.
Um,
Okay, I think we volunteered you to provide sort of a general overview of where we've been, where we are, and next steps on the housing production.
Yeah, so we've been in this process for a while now. We convened, last year, we convened a working group with representatives from this board, from the planning board, from the community. Had about 15 different representatives. Hold on, I have the numbers here, the names here, so I'm not going to read them all, but Housing Partnership Board was represented. Council on Aging was there as well. There were multiple residents from different precincts, and as I mentioned, Planning Board, Select Board. Richard, our town manager, was also there. We contracted MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, to help us with this. They have drafted a large number of housing production plans around their area, the Boston metropolitan area, for several communities, including Lexington right next door and others. We had 2 community meetings and evenings to get, one for goals, another one to look at strategies, and those results are in the draft of the housing production plan. The draft went online August 13th for public comment, and public comment closed 10 days ago on September. So there was a month of public comment, and of course, all the members of this board have also had the draft of the plan since August as well, and we've been giving feedback to MAPC and to our town planner for this month to include in the future revision of the draft, which you should have received today over email. And it was tweaked some, but that's what we're discussing.
And I think that our public sessions that we had went very well, very well attended, and very engaged, and really informed the production plan kind of moving forward and kind of its evolution of where it is today. So I think that, and we did have some online responses that were kind of all over this place. Some people that still don't want affordable housing at all, and made their voice heard about that, and but other people that made some good constructive comments. So I think it's been good so far.
Just as a point of information, it's not a question of whether we want affordable housing or we don't want affordable housing. Not wanting affordable housing, I understand that there's people who don't want that, but that's not one of the options available to us. The options that are available to us is we can either have affordable housing that we have some planning control over, or we can have affordable housing that developers file for a 40B and they get to bypass all of our zoning laws and build pretty much, whatever they want. So those are the options available. The not having affordable housing is just, I know we got a lot of comments online about that, people that we just don't want affordable housing. By state law, that's not one of the options, right? The options is we either have control of it or the developers via the 40B process have control of it.
Not having affordable housing is where we are now. So.
Right.
I have a question on the procedure. The draft they sent, or at least the draft that I reviewed, had goals, which are understandable. Then in terms of quantitative objectives, number of units to be produced, they had what seemed to me to be 3 or 4 variants, okay? They didn't seem to recommend one, okay? And then there were several dozen strategies, which, as I said earlier, which covered a waterfront of stuff. It would seem to me that they've given us an inventory of what you could do without actually bringing us what I would call policy packages, a goal, a particular set of objectives, and a particular set of strategies that we could look and make trade-offs. If we adopt their plan as written with this kind of inventory of stuff, it's not really a plan. It's a document that says here's a lot of stuff you could do. What are we actually committing to? Or do we have to narrow that down and commit to a particular schedule and a particular set of, or at least desirable strategies? I thought what they gave us was
it's still
a cloud of possibilities.
I think
without
it's going to
actually
be.
a plan.
I think it's going to be that to a certain degree. Somewhat of an inventory and somewhat of choose your own
Yeah,
adventure.
but what are we actually
So-
committing to? Or is it just the fact that we've submitted this cloud of stuff to them and that's?
But we said that we've identified opportunities,
Okay,
and
but
these
what
are
are we
what they
actually, what are we
are.
actually committing to? I
Yeah,
wasn't
I
clear
mean,
from their regs.
I think the commitment is on us to choose, which path, and we can, do multiple things. We should be doing multiple things at the same time, so.
So,
Yeah,
if
but
I can
again,
answer,
they
we're
don't-
not committing to anything. The reality is, if we adopt this, DHCD accepts it, that does not mean we get safe harbor. Until we actually produce, this gives us a number of strategies that we can follow to produce affordable house, affordable housing for the subsidized housing inventory, SHI, and a way to get safe harbor. But the requirements to get safe harbor are to have the plan adopted by DHCD and then to actually produce. We're not committing to passing any zoning change, we're not committed to doing anything that this plan says, but if we don't, then we are in the same place we are now, which somebody can file a 40B, get a letter, and then we have to,
Okay, but my concern is this plan is not a plan, it is really an inventory of things. So then data about conditions, they have 4 or 5 goals, they have 4 or 5 numerical strategies, if you wanna do things as fast as possible, if you wanna do things over a period of 10 years, if you wanna do, all of those are possibilities. But they don't seem to have helped us to narrow down, or they haven't even brought us packages that we could say, we wanna do it over 10 years because we're gonna need to do zoning changes, or we wanna do it in 10 years because we hope 2 projects will show up. Do we have to narrow it down before we submit it to them? Or we just say, here's this umbrella of stuff, and later we'll figure out what to do with it?
That's right, I think it's the latter.
yes.
So it's really an inventory that we submit to DHCP, and then later we figure out how to build an implementable plan.
Yeah,
Well-
and I think that in the
It's-
past.
That's fine with me,
Yes,
but I'm just,
and these are, these are required in order to go down the path of seeking safe harbor. It's part of the process, as Mariano said, that we've got to do the housing production plan, identify opportunities, and then actually commit to the housing. I think that they've seen where they haven't been successful in other communities is where they've been too rigid and too specific, and have just focused on very specific opportunities which hadn't come to fruition, rather than keeping a lot of balls in the air for
but
different.
I'm worried specifically about the section on the numbers. They did 4 or 5 very good tables, said, if you wanted to do it quickly, if you wanted to do it in 10 years, if you wanted to do thus and such. I mean, the analysis was great, but you can't do all of them at the same time.
Right. So, I mean, that's why I
And
think
the
if we look
question
at
is,
strategy,
I mean, we're submitting a plan to them that has 5 plans within it. So we have to then come back later and
so I
decide
think,
which one?
right, I mean, I think if we look at strategy 14, which is establish a housing production plan implementation committee, right, and it, ensure plan goals are effectively advanced, and
So they actually have to generate the plan as opposed to.
Could you
No.
actually find the page number, please?
yeah, page 103.
Thank you.
So, that tasks us as the lead board, but then that we would have an implementation committee that would have also members of the planning board. The planning department would be involved, council on aging, school committee, disability access commission, historical commission, and design review committee. So that implementation committee, that would be one of the first things that we would, that I would posit to this board, that should be one of the first things that we should do. And that implementation committee will take all of the rest first decide, do we want a 5-year or a 10-year term to get to 10%? How are we going to first get safe harbor? And then look at the other strategies here. There's 24 strategies on the plan, and which strategies, how are we going to align them and when? And of course, then as time goes on and opportunities for development come up, because it's not all going to fit in the parcels that are available today, right? It's going to happen over time. And so that implementation committee is very important to be able to to apply these strategies to parcels that become available to produce inventory.
if this housing production plan they're talking about, we're filing, is really not a plan, it's really an inventory of possible directions and actions and strategies, and if we accept that, we're not actually, that's not actually a plan. It is a filing that says you've done your homework on the issue.
Right, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, this is the format that DHCD
And then you
expects,
have
yeah.
to go ahead to develop a plan. Seems to me like we've spent a lot of effort not to get to the point where we can debate what might be an implementation plan, but that's my personal.
This is the format that DHCD expects.
Yeah, and I think that
that's-
a lot of other
And
communities.
they'll accept it, even though it calls a plan, it's not a plan, they'll accept it.
We've looked at other communities. I know like Newton's plan is, they invested a lot more money, a lot more time. It's a very large document. And it ended up not performing as well for them because it was so narrowly focused and so specific. At the end of the day, DHCD they don't care which one of these paths you choose or how many you choose, as long as you hit your number of getting to a certain percentage. So if there's one of these that works perfectly and we get, our 80 units.
When we file this, we don't have to give them a number. There's a block of tables in there that give us all sorts of different numbers.
Right.
Well, because DHCD gives us different numbers, because DHCD says if you produce 0.5%, you get 1 year of safe harbor. If you produce 1%, you get 2 years.
We haven't picked one of those paths. You're saying this implementation committee would be the one that would have to then say, all things considered, we ought to try this path.
Yeah, and that's why some of the recommendations for the goals are, short-term, medium-term, ongoing. When we are looking to amend the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, that will take some time for us to do, but it'll open up some opportunities for us down the road, not immediately.
Yeah, but in reading through those 22 dozen strategies, I would say that fully 2/3 of them don't really address affordable housing.
Yeah, can we get to that
They
actually?
could
Because
address
that's
all
my
sorts of
problem.
housing, yeah.
So as Ms. Goldson, who's certainly an expert in this area, I am assuming, sort of mentioned, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but the way I understood, she was sort of identifying your typical plan to reach a safe harbor, is a plan that is focused on capital A affordable housing that counts towards that inventory. So this plan seems to include a lot of topics and a lot of subjects that go to housing in general. And some of those go to increasing inventory for affordable, capital A, what counts as affordable housing counts as far as the state formula, but many of them don't. So I guess my overall comment, and this is, I guess, sort of parallel with Lance's, but really kind of separate, is that I just wonder, and this isn't really just rhetorical, it's really a suggestion, that can't we have this either split so that there's topics that talk about the safe harbor and the inventory, which I actually thought the plan was focused on, and then other topics about housing, either have 2 separate reports or 2 separate chapters, because by mixing them all together, I think, and I don't mean this in any way disrespectfully, I know there's been a lot of hard work, but I think having worked to some extent in this for 4 years on the planning board, one of the things that I really strive to do is make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about when. And I think that it's a disservice to people, not anyone on this board, but just in general, talking about this area of housing, to not clarify what topic we're talking about. So if we're talking about safe harbor and the goal to get our percentage up, which seems like was the impetus for this effort, then it would seem to me that we would want something that's gonna focus on what's gonna count towards that inventory. And many of the other topics on here, like, and I'm paraphrasing, but like relaxing zoning, ADUs. Is an ADU part of capital A affordable housing?
It can be, yeah,
Of course.
yeah,
Like, is it today?
No.
No.
not today.
So why is
But
it?
that's,
That's why it says amend the ADU
Right.
bylaw.
To make it count as affordable housing, but
I know,
To
but
make,
doesn't.
to make, create additional opportunity. I mean, one of the differences with Winchester from other communities is we don't have land or, really a lot of available parcels to identify.
All right, hold on a second. So everybody here has read this report, okay? So, and we know what that terminology is. So, and we know that we don't have like ample, land that's developable. But an ADU means different things to different people. And to some people, they might be concerned that it means possibly, you know, massively multiplying our density and therefore needing bigger, you know, more schools and having more traffic issues, et cetera, et cetera. So just having that topic there without sort of anchoring it, do they automatically count as affordable housing units? I think the answer is no.
Well, not now, but I guess the broader question is
So then why, let me just
So-
finish my thought. So then it seems like if we're talking about an inventory, so this has a lot of, sort of like a canvas of different tools a community can consider to have different types of housing, preserve different types of housing, increase different types of housing, all kinds of topics on housing. So, and for that, in and of itself, it's very useful and impressive that it's so comprehensive. But if the point is to pass something that's gonna, if those who are, have worked so hard on this, want to have some sort of plan that's focused on that getting to 10%, then it would seem to me that you would want a section that focuses on what counts towards that percentage. And all the other things really go to so many broader issues. So there's one topic in here, aside from the,
So let me, before we switch to another topic, can I address the ADU issue very quickly, please? I mean, so the ADU strategy, strategy 16, if anybody's following along at home, it specifically says that the action plan is not to immediately allow ADUs everywhere, to multiply housing opportunities, but part of the action plan, the second bullet in the action plan, is to draft amendments to the ADU bylaw that reflect real concerns and potential development impact. So that, I mean, what you're saying, yes, you're right. There are many concerns about ADUs, but those would have to be addressed. And this is a long-term goal. It's not a short-term goal that would produce
okay, so here's my
subsidized
other general
units
comment.
immediately.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but here's my other general comment is, just even verb choice of consider certain things, to consider doing certain things as opposed to doing them. So as has been voiced earlier this evening, particularly regarding the master plan, it seemed like maybe it was just being summary, and I'm not holding anybody to this specific language, but it seemed like the idea was that this was a policy, and if this plan is adopted, then that becomes the policy of Winchester. Well, this is a perfect example. So is the policy of Winchester to then, whether it's the, whatever the standard would be for ADU, or this other section about, I think even some of the terminology is, yeah, it says improving the permitting process. Well, what does that mean? That then there can't be people who live nearby who comment on it? Like, who knows what that means? So considering that is very valid and very valuable. So these topics are certainly important for the community to be talking about, but I think, for one thing, dividing what counts as affordable and what doesn't, as far as the inventory, would be helpful for the reader to know. And then, second of all, particularly those things that maybe don't count, to change the verbs, and to be more like, you know, consider reviewing, or to consider, or to analyze, as opposed to doing things.
So, I mean, I agree, but, I mean, so the plan has 116 pages, so, you know, I think that maybe we should submit the editing recommendations in writing, because otherwise we're gonna be here for a very long time if we're going to.
I do think that there are very specific, you know, I mean, there are, you know, action plans here. I mean, there are concepts, and then there are action plans that are built into it. So, you know, when you're looking at addressing the permitting process, you know, it's, you know, the action plan is to draft zoning amendments to improve the permitting process for mixed income housing development. That is a way to create more opportunities that do not exist for us to meet our, you know, our 10%. I mean, that's very specific. That is an
Okay,
action.
that sounds specific, but your improve the process, does that mean that no one would be able to comment on it? I mean, who knows, that's one of
It
those
says,
points, nobody has
part of that
definition
action
for
plan then says conduct community engagement to build support and form coalitions prior to town meeting. I mean, so it's a community process, so it's certainly all of these action plans are, they consider community engagement. I mean, that's,
Okay. Richard,
Yeah, just would interject a point of information. So is the purpose of your joint meeting on Tuesday night with the planning board is to get some answers to, I mean, you're not adopting the
Well, it sounded,
plan on Tuesday
it
night.
sounded
Aren't you
like,
gonna
well,
ask some
That was, the plan was, so what was communicated to this board in August was the draft is available, please read it, start going through it, and submit comments and edits to MAPC and to the town planner, so that we can incorporate it into the draft. It wasn't that we would go page by page at these meetings.
and certainly-
Considering your conversation tonight, though, don't you think that maybe a good outcome for Tuesday night would be to get a series of tight questions down for
That's
the
what I- that's what I
consultant
thought.
on
That's what I
Tuesday
thought.
night and
Yeah.
maybe get some feedback to that?
first
and-
of all, what's the magic date of the 9th? I know this is really hard work, but I mean, first of all, I tried to go, I signed up for that online feedback system, and for some reason I couldn't link it to this plan. But I can edit this in a week and with the suggestion I had, but that's not the point. The point is that you got a lot of comments, which is great. I mean, do you have like 52 drafts? Like, it's more than that. It's like taking comments like this and figuring out, I'm speaking as a member of this board.
Yeah.
So the idea of our comments, the way I understood from our chair, and I CC'd everybody else, was, are supposed to put it on there or at our meetings? And I was, the way I understood it was our individual comments on there. Well, I'm a member of the select board, and my comments are within that frame of mind, with all due respect. So
Yeah.
I just think that misunderstanding would be something that no one who's part of this process would want to have happen. So when I look at this, though, I just get concerned that this is so comprehensive, which is fantastic, but that when you read it, somebody might have the misimpression that everything here is a tool towards capital A affordable, and it just by definition isn't. So isn't the purpose of the plan, as Ms. Goldson mentioned, to focus on the safe harbor? And could we split this, it'd be so easy to do, split this
So-
into 2 chapters?
So one thing is,
So, let
that's
me-
the main focus that towns and that we have taken for SHI, but that's not, so DHCD requires that we also look at 80 to 120%, even if that's not part of the SHI. So a lot of the things that are in here are the format that is required by DHCD. So we can't just say,
Fine, let me,
this is, the only thing we're going to do is produce this much,
Let me-
because they do require it for the format.
let me,
that's-
But still, just to be clear,
let me split the chair speak for a minute. Let me suggest something that I think could be done in the relatively short term that would assuage my concerns. If DHCD is not concerned about us committing to a specific plan, but to have these paths available.
that's right.
Okay, there's a section in here that, it's, let's see, it's listed as quantitative goals, and I guess it's on.
What page?
I'm trying, I can't find on my little screen here, let me find out here a second. 69 starts on. Okay. They have a section ahead of that that has general goals, which are fine, deal with affordable housing, deal with, 120. When you get to page 69, they have 4 charts. And if I read them, they're terribly titled, but the first one is effectively, if you want to achieve safe harbor for 1 year, then you have to build 40 units over the next several years, a year, right?
0.5%.
Yeah. If you want to achieve safe harbor for 2 years, you have to build at least 79 more each calendar year for the next bunch of years. There's a third issue which says if you want to achieve 10% restricted things in 5 years, you have to build 129 units a year. And if you want to do it over 10 years, you have to build 64. It would seem to me that each of those represents sort of a policy decision about how fast you want to go or how quick. But if they're simply laid out as separate paths, what you want to do under each one of those is to say which of those 24 strategies would you most likely be looking at to get to those kind of numbers. Because each one is going to be quite different. Some of them may be repeating, but that would seem to satisfy the question of laying out paths in a way that's understandable, right? And you could put a separate section over to do the mid-income housing pieces. which is, I think, a separate issue at the moment. It would probably be better taken up under, I mean, if they wanna file it, fine, but we need to map those over to the master plan. My concern right now is that this inventory of information right now is not set up so that we as a board or an implementation committee can begin to make choices. Right now we have a blob. This would at least divide it into some paths and the relevant strategies. And I think that would satisfy.
The issue is that it depends so much on what
That's fine.
parcels are available that it's hard to say.
Plays out some paths. We, do we want to, as a group, want to move quickly to 10%, or do we think it's going to be a very slow process? We have to make some policy decisions at that level, right?
Yeah.
I think what's different in some other communities, why the DHCD has this format, is that if you have town-owned land or land that's available to you, say if we said, hey, we're going to put 40 units, we're gonna take the Parkhurst School, we're gonna put out an RFP, and we're gonna, make that 40 units. We just don't have that flexibility, so I think the implementation, committee is where a lot of those decisions, are where the rubber hits the road, not on the front end.
So again, if we've done this inventory, we've swept up all these ideas, if all DHCP wants is for us to submit that inventory effectively.
That's right.
And then we go put an implementation committee together to figure out how do you put those things in the paths and which ones do you follow as the opportunity comes up. That's fine, but this plan implies that we're committing to something, and right now, this isn't, there's no plan in the plan, right? I mean, there's opportunities, there's strategies, there's tools, but there's a bunch of objectives.
I don't know what a plan would look like at this point.
Well, how would you implement this?
Yeah, I mean, that is the.
And right now we have something that says a plan that isn't.
Yeah.
It's not implementable.
I mean, I think that you're getting caught up in
in the word plan.
In the word plan.
Yeah,
I mean, so I
it
think
says
that
plan,
DHCD is not, that's not what they're looking for.
We adopt a plan that isn't.
They're not looking for, like how the, master plan was laid out, that in, from December of this year, you're gonna do this, and so these are, a survey or inventory of opportunities that Winchester has specifically, and then we see where the rubber hits the road at a later date with implementation.
So this basically is an inventory that's submitted to the HCD, and they say, good, thank you.
They wanna know that we've considered all of these different options that they see as potential housing opportunities.
So we made an inventory and survey, and we know all the pieces out there, but we don't really have an implementation plan or a strategic plan to get it done yet. That comes.
Well, I mean, now we have to go look at which strategies we can put in what land is available, right? So in Waterfield lot, there's something that can happen there. In privately owned land, we have a lot less control, right?
I understand the tactical pieces of it, but at a broader strategic business plan level, what you're talking about is detailed implementation. They're just doing a survey. There's a missing piece in the middle. And that's your implementation.
Well, it's not just a survey, but there's a number of strategies that an implementation committee can put together to reach.
It's a toolbox without any directions on which way you're supposed to go. David?
I share some of the concerns that the chair has, and Jackie as well, on the goals of, 40 to 70 units, it's my feeling that we're setting ourselves up for failure to some degree. I mean, if you just look back the past 25, 50 years, what have we been able to do? It seems like every time if we try to get one unit, it's World War III. So that's my concern is you write these down as goals, but if you don't have a plan that will be implemented, what does the state look at? How does the state look at us if we're saying 40 to 70 units we're seeking safe harbor, but
just to be clear, 40 or 79 units is not a goal that we're setting. That's the law. Right, so if you don't believe that can be produced, then we can just let developers come in, do a huge 40B. That's what you're saying.
But what happens to us if we don't get 40 to 70?
Then we don't get safe harbor.
That's it.
Then developers can do 40Bs.
That's the only thing.
That's the way it's been for
Right.
for 50 to 75 years, so.
And people don't like it, that's why we did housing production.
Well,
Right.
Right.
But this doesn't.
I'm not
We're
sure,
not gonna
just
get
because
arrested.
people maybe don't like hostile 40Bs in general as a concept, doesn't mean that they agree with all 110 pages of this plan. So you have to be very careful, this is where people live.
That's
This
not
is
what I
a-
said.
No,
Okay,
right.
I'm sorry
Yeah.
if I misunderstood.
Yeah,
You did.
So, all right, so that was on the chairs, and then, what Jackie was talking about, again, I've got some concerns, especially on the ADUs. I look at that as a game changer to the character of Winchester if we start going down that path.
The plan doesn't say that we would do that. This is
Well,
a
it's in
number
there.
of strategies.
It says amend the ADU bylaw.
Yeah, it's in there.
That would have to go through town
Consider.
meeting.
I know, but, excuse me, some of this maybe is terminology, and I'd be happy to put words like consider in here. I could do that in 48 hours. If you'd like me to, I'd volunteer. But, so on page 87, it says amend the ADU bylaw. It doesn't say consider doing it. It says do it. So rather than having resident feedback and all that, and also how, there's like about 1,000 ways you can do that, right? Some towns have affidavits every year, some don't, et cetera. So, and then just to have that in there, just to highlight on one example, which is the one that I mentioned before, because as of today, that's not capital A affordable anyway. So I don't even understand why it's in the report. No disrespect intended to anybody. But that's why, not to be repetitive, but that's why I think it'd be more useful to have the sort of like, highlight the ones that are gonna count towards the inventory, those options, maybe, have something that seems like an actual, like, target or whatever, and then have, hey, here's some other things that communities consider doing. And it's basically just working with what this is and just making a few modifications.
Right now, the language in this says Winchester can achieve safe harbor in the short and medium terms by taking the following steps, and it lists out 4 of the different, 40, 79, so on like that. But as worded, it's not committing us to that. We're just
No.
filing a plan that says,
Right, it's
we're
not committing us to anything.
we're filing a document that says these are possible paths.
And again, where it says,
Is that-
where the header, where it says under regulatory strategies, it does say amend the ADU bylaw. And then under action plan, it says conduct community conversations about ADUs, draft amendments, conduct community engagement, potentially partnership with regional ally like MAPC, CHAPA, and form coalitions prior to town meeting. It doesn't say we're going, straight to jail. This is a strategy for community
Well,
engagement
hold
about
on.
ADUs.
But this becomes
Hold
a
on,
policy,
Jackie,
as
can I-
Mariano said
No.
earlier, and so that way, anytime somebody suggests.
No. I didn't say it becomes a policy. Can I address one of your concerns, if I understand it correctly? So you want to have these strategies, have it noted which ones are specifically for subsidized housing inventory and which ones are for something else?
More general.
More general, because
I'm just
if
suggesting that.
if
I'm
that's
not
the case, no, if that's the case,
saying
the implementation plan, the table at the end, so after all of the goals, has 6 goals there, right? And it's hard, they are in vertical there and columns. And goal number 4 is increased.
I'm sorry, what page?
So in the page 100, although if you have it printed from, so goal number 4 is increased affordable housing for lower income households. So that would be goal number 4. So those would be the ones that would
I'm
go.
sorry, I have engage and partner with housing developers on page 100.
No, in the columns, the column at the top of the table, in vertical writing.
Okay, yeah, it says engage and partner with housing developers, number 4.
Yeah, it says expand supply of.
Okay.
It's right here. Goal number 4, increase affordable housing for
Oh, okay.
lower
That's
income
not
households, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
You see the column heading?
Implementation plan on page 99? Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
see. Oh,
Right,
oh,
and
that one, author
right,
one.
right. And each strategy
Right, okay.
has marked with an X what would be that, right? So those would be the things that, if we're looking specifically for SHI, those are the things to look at. For example, commit suitable public land to housing, like the Waterfield, that has that marked, but ADUs, which is strategy number, was it 16?
13.
16?
Excuse me, 15.
Doesn't have that marked. right? So this clearly delineates which strategies would be to increase
Okay, well,
subsidized
you said
housing
clearly,
inventory.
But it's that, I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, I heard you, I understand how
Yeah.
that works, but you have to get to page 100 to understand that, and you have to have read all of this, that arguably sounds like mandated language before you get to that. So I would just suggest that for clarity, that it be, depending on who's reading this, I'm assuming this is a community document, as the master plan folks said, they'd be sort of integrating some of this potentially in the master plan. And I don't know why that can't be on page 87, for example, in that ADU bylaw section, to say, something to that effect, this won't impact the inventory whatsoever, or whatever, unless a bylaw, I guess it would have to get approval by the state if it.
Could,
came
I mean,
that
if,
way.
it could, if ADUs were deed restricted, but,
I just
I mean,
think
that's,
everything should be just very clear what it is, and so that way, I honestly think if, it may help lead to more success, because then people would be focused on, as opposed to, like 25 things, which maybe are fine to focus on in general. If the purpose is to try to increase the inventory, like, what is the purpose of this plan? If that's the primary purpose,
well, I think part of the purpose is also, is to not narrow it down so much that then, for some reason, those strategies don't work out in 3 years to produce another 40 units, and then, we don't have in the plan I mean, of course, we could amend it then, but we have all the strategies now here, and then the implementation committee is going to have to figure out what works and what can be used based on the land that is available for development at the time.
Something like ADUs could, that's a really important topic that people would have a wide variety of opinions about, and there might have to be an incremental kind of discussion about it. It came up with the
I agree.
planning board often.
Yeah.
So something where that's treated just with the same kind of, ink level, a page and a half or a page, as everything else, it just sort of jumps out as, what is the purpose of this report? And I just think it's concerning and could lead to a lot of maybe, assumptions that that's an automatic policy of the town, when a lot of people won't have weighed in on that.
That's all, again, I'll say it again, ADUs would dramatically affect the character of Winchester. I don't know if the general public.
And you can voice that opinion,
Right.
even if you're not on the select board, at one of the community
Yeah,
meetings.
I don't know if people understand what that really entails.
Well, that's why the action plan,
Right.
it builds into this recommendation, this strategy,
Yeah.
very heavy community engagement. So there's an opportunity for that conversation.
And this one doesn't say we're going to go pursue ADUs right now. I mean, that's not,
And then the ADU bylaw, so I would.
that's one of the strategies that are available to communities to increase affordable housing. That doesn't mean that we are going to go and approve ADUs. That's not in the short-term future for
Where does
town
it say
meeting
that?
to,
Well, no,
What?
wait,
Where does it say that
we're
it's
getting
not
into
in the
quibbling
short
over this. What I'm,
because we're not bringing, the planning board is not bringing zoning change to town meeting.
It says it right there,
Where,
So-
look at the second page.
so,
where it says amend the ADU bylaw?
It says medium term, it says time frame, right? And then it goes into the steps that would have to be taken. And I think having community engagement is one of those. Going to town meeting, building coalitions. That's obviously not something that we vote this and then all of a sudden there is uniform ADU zoning requirements throughout the town. It's with any planning documents, they are ultimately strategies. With the master
I
plan,
think it'd be really easy to just add a few verbs in here, and I'd be happy to do it, which is some things like consider, for things that don't immediately impact that inventory, and I think it would help the overall usefulness.
Yeah, so that's why we're having this. So if we can discuss that, like if you have it written down, that way we can discuss that.
but I think the issue of wording goes more broadly. If I've understood what you're saying, what you've got here is a whole set of things that could be done.
yes,
None of them are in fact mandated.
none of them are.
And so it's not really a plan that you're adopting, it is again, an inventory of things you could do. Right?
Yeah.
You could adopt
Many of which
48
won't affect the inventory, or
Well,
affordable.
Well, some
Well,
could.
What I read it as an inventory of things you could do in terms of goals and numerical objectives and strategies, none of which are packaged in any organized set yet, but they could be used at this point to both improve your affordable inventory as well as your, middle income or middle housing range, workforce housing. Right now, it's a grab bag of everything.
Just as a point of information, could we please not use that word workforce housing? Because no offense to you, but I think it's very arrogant. I think that most people work, and those who don't work in other ways. So it's not
Excuse
about
me,
you,
stop,
but if we
stop,
could
stop,
just not
stop,
use
stop,
that word,
stop,
it would be
stop.
great.
Allow me to finish the sentence. I think the whole discussion of a plan implies that we're actually committing to these things and that there are applied policies to be executed. I don't know if they'll accept different titling on it, but the front thing out of this basically say this is an inventory of things that could be done. Because it sounds very much like we submit it, they say, great, you've considered all the possibilities, and we are in fact haven't got any policy packages that we could adopt, and we haven't really begun to follow any of these paths. That has to come as a second step. You have an implementation committee. The wording of the individual strategies could be changed, but the whole package is in fact just a good inventory of what you could do, right?
That's exactly it, and I do
Yeah.
think that DHCD has an interest, so if we are looking at getting 40 units to get to our 0.5% in the first year, and we get to 34 units, and they see that we've taken some of these additional steps that don't necessarily produce units right away, like, the passing the CPA or something like that, then I think that they're going to know that we're working hard towards the goal of increasing affordable housing and will stay with us and potentially allow us to be in safe harbor for that period if we show that there's
lean.
a
I
path.
think we've heard that in
Yeah.
I
discussions
thought
in the
it's
past.
just all sheer numbers.
It
whether or
isn't,
not it's
no, I think we heard very clearly from
Yeah.
DHCP and Mass Housing in earlier discussions of, for example, the Forest Circle stuff, that if you're making progress, if you have the plan in place and you're making progress, they'll lean backwards. If you have a hostile 40B project come in,
But
they
making
will,
progress on affordable housing.
on affordable housing, whether
Right.
it's,
Not
you don't make
15
40, you're
other
making
things.
20, you're making
Well,
30.
But there's another thing, which is, so having a housing production plan that is accepted by DHCD is also the first step on being able to get grants for technical assistance. There's a second step also, which the second step can be a number of things. There's like 3 or 4 different options for what the second step is. And all of those options are in this plan, and we could implement one of those. And then we would be eligible for even larger grants for technical assistance and development. So even beyond just producing the numbers, there's other advantages to having the plan in place, because we can get state money.
Does the plan have to include all of these items? Because it sounded like what Ms. Goldson was saying was that what she seemed to be indicating was that most housing, and maybe I misunderstood her, but was that most of these plans focus on affordable housing, capital A, to reduce the inventory to get the safe harbor, period.
Some of these are density
Driven, not affordable.
density driven, not affordable, you know. And if I could, again, one of the concerns I have when we had Ms. Golson here, when I brought up the subject about a conflict between this plan and the master plan, she had said, well, if it's a new plan, we would consider that probably as an accepted policy by the town. So that's,
We could tell them we haven't got one yet.
again, so I was just raising the point about, what's in here could be accepted as policy that would go into our master plan. And right now, again, I look at this as, there's some very good plans and strategies for affordable housing, but it's the density driven plans that I would have concerns on, especially the ADU.
Yeah, but
So-
keep
I
in
mean-
mind 2 things.
I guess,
Keep in mind 2 things. What goes into a master plan is just words. It is not enforceable in the state of Massachusetts. Whatever you say in the master plan, community consensus on.
So
what
both
ought
of
to
these,
go.
In the
both
same
of
way,
these
they're
are,
both called a plan.
paperweights,
So
right?
Yeah,
I think that we just
They-
need
they
to
are
change our
sometimes.
idea of what a plan is in the
yeah.
public policy realm.
This is not a plan. I mean, they call it that for their purposes, but for us, it's.
Spending a lot of money for,
It's a document that
Right.
DHCD requires
Yeah,
in order
so-
for you to get there. But, so can I just say,
Yep.
Go
suggest
ahead,
something?
yeah.
So, not that you're spinning your wheels here. It's all good conversation. But you got the meeting on the 9th where you think you want to vote, right? But I'm just saying, that's the plan.
Yeah, I mean, the longer we take, the longer we
Yeah,
are,
that's
we
fine.
are subject to
All I
40Bs,
was gonna
right?
suggest
So,
is there anything, based upon what you all heard tonight from each other, that you think you could do, say, Monday on the 1st, to vet concerns, objections, suggestions, editorial or otherwise, that you could take up Monday by looking at it between now and then, so that you're ready if the plan is, the preferred plan is to vote it on the 9th. You have the 1st to continue to voice these things, or is it the suggestion by DHCD that you actually comment online, or do you think you all could take it up, you could take up a
I
number
mean,
of
if we're
suggestions?
voting on it, then
Well,
I
you're
would
voting on it on the
suggest that we
9th.
don't have to just comment online.
no, it wouldn't be.
Are you voting
online.
on?
Yeah.
I envision some substantial debate, you know, and discussion with the
But
planning board.
when do you?
Well, again,
On the 9th though, Dave? That's what I'm getting at.
yeah, I mean, if we need to go beyond that, why,
And have
why
another
rush
joint
into
meeting.
something?
So
Well,
that's
if we're
what
not
you should
rushing
sort
into
out.
it, I mean, I think that we have a contract with MAPC that expires at a certain point where we can contribute, you know, more funds if we want to keep on having
To bring them
discussion.
back.
But it
I mean-
will, you know, it will push back our ability to reach safe harbor and move forward
But
with the
would we
plan.
need
So-
them, like if we had a working session with the planning board on the 9th, and then we had another date a couple weeks after as a potential, kind of see where
Adoption,
people
right?
stand, and even if the contract expired with MAPC, I mean, they're not part of our vote, no
Well,
offense.
they're putting the plan together for it.
I
So-
understand that, but
Doesn't mean you can.
there's,
So I just don't understand, like, how we get to it, to vote this, because the plan has been in front of, everybody on this table for 6 weeks, and,
excuse me, just for the record,
Yeah.
this is the first time it's been on the agenda, and I've asked ever since the very beginning of September that it be on our agenda, so
Right.
I don't think that's really constructive for you to
no,
keep
my
talking
point
about
is,
that.
how do we get to,
So,
because I don't, what I'm trying to get to is what the process is going to be for getting the edits that everybody wants, because discussing them here, I mean, I think that we need to have whatever edits you have in mind, whatever is a problem in writing, what edits you would want, and then we can discuss those and vote them. I'm not sure that trying to edit by here talking without something in writing is
Well,
going to
that's-
get us
that's
to plan.
helpful.
That's all.
Right,
That's
helpful,
my.
but this was our first sort of airing, and so,
in listening to the discussion, and we can cut this, I think you could begin to deal with this up front by basically, you know, it says, the HPP positions the town to meet its obligations under Mass General Law, blah, blah, blah. As such, it contains the following components. Housing needs assessment based on data, population, fine. Assessment of regulatory and non-regulatory constraints, fine, that's inventory. Identification of residential development opportunities in town, fine, that's been done. This is housing goals, strategies for achieving these goals. I mean, basically that has to say, that's housing goals, strategies for potentially achieving these goals, and there's no, and possible routes to implementation. And this basically, as far as I can figure, doesn't commit us.
No, I mean, if you read the sentence right before
I don't
that,
know how else we can say that, yeah.
So let me finish. So maybe what we need up in the front of this thing is a statement that says, you know, this basically says it meets these goals, it doesn't commit us to it, but the next steps would be to put together an implementation committee to consider how you improve these. Because I think all of these basically are ideas that you could use, but
Yeah.
the whole
They're
thing doesn't
strategies.
commit to anything.
Yeah.
They're
Strategies.
strategies, but they're based on data, and they're
That's
based
fine.
on.
I'm just talking about what's the intent of this plan. does it commit us to do something, or does it simply give us tools
So,
to do something?
Can I read, it says, "The goals and strategy in this plan will guide Winchester's housing efforts."
Yeah, but that implies
not-
that they're goals that have been adopted as
Exactly.
policy.
Exactly.
No, guide,
No, it
Guide us
does,
to me.
because if some
That's-
people think that, like ADUs, for example, just because it's an easy example, that some towns have expanded that in a very specific way for certain, like, say, households with disabilities, and they require an affidavit every year. I mean, there's like about 1,000 ways to do that. And like having, full participation and thinking that out, and also, of course, it's 2/3 on the vote at town
Mhm.
meeting for zoning, and then to just sort of have it here that sort of seems like a guide,
Well,
it's
I-
almost
I-
like presupposes that it's,
Yeah, I think you're
that
beating
it's
that.
already, that some cookie cutter version is already agreed to.
I think you're
Mhm.
beating that a little too hard. I think most of this basically says, here's things you could consider, and maybe we ought to reinforce that. It doesn't commit us to doing it.
Well,
right?
respectfully, I disagree with you, okay?
Okay, well, I read the thing through in quite
Well,
some
you know what, I
detail.
did too, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's take this up again next session.
Well, I think Mariano brings up an excellent point, that what, if we're trying to move to any sort of certain place, what happens? But I mean, what happens with all that feedback you guys got? Like, did you guys integrate that, or like, cause,
Yes.
yes,
so this manifests all that so far?
yes, the one that came out today, yes.
Okay, I mean, if you guys, this conversation I think is really constructive and helpful, and it's the first one that the board has had on this. So, I mean, I'm completely happy anytime to, based on this conversation, and I can even talk to Lance about some of his comments, to come up with something that, would just be a conversation piece for our next meeting, if that would be helpful. But I, didn't wanna advance that necessarily until we had this conversation, so.
Yeah, I looked at this as our first joint discussion, and it being on the
And of course, I
agenda.
don't know what the Housing Production Plan Committee would think of that, or what the planning board would think of that, but, I mean, my whole view is just to kind of separate out what counts right now towards the inventory, and what's a tool that's possible, and then to change some of the verbs to consider. So, and I would be happy to do that,
If the
for
primary,
consideration.
if the primary purpose of this is to meet their regulatory requirement
Yes.
that we have done the inventory and submitted it without actually committing us to actually any one of the individual strategies or goals, then maybe we ought to say that up front and,
That's fair.
say,
Uh,
because I think, if it's a check off the box, they wanna see we've done the inventory, let's do it.
Yeah, we can put that in at
And
the
we need to
very
put it
beginning.
right up in the front.
Yes.
The report
An
itself
editorial
is,
comment?
Yes.
the report itself is, in my opinion, sort of not very well written and constructed, but if it's basically an inventory, that's what it is.
Well, in addition to what you just said, I still think it would be useful with some of them to use verbs like consider.
Well, then, why don't you propose?
I'd be happy to.
I just don't wanna be, stuck in a semantic discussion, for months on end. We have a goal here, with the housing production plan, and, I think that we've had a lot of community engagement. We've had, meetings, we've had, open forums, we've had, stakeholder meetings. I mean, I think, the sooner that we get to work on producing housing, the better.
But this
But
doesn't,
that's not mutually exclusive, I mean,
no.
It is.
Yes, it
because
is, you have to do this
you
first,
have to do this first.
yeah.
no, but we're doing it every day trying to figure out
Well, no,
affordable
we're
housing.
not-
But it doesn't count until we have the plan adopted first.
Yeah, but any affordable housing, what we just did tonight
Yeah, but we
assists
can't-
with that.
But it doesn't count towards safe harbor until we have the housing plan.
But it
for the-
counts towards our inventory number.
No,
Right, but we're not gonna get to 10%.
But that's all I
But
said,
one
it
unit at a
counts
time.
To our inventory
Well,
number.
no,
It's
no,
not-
No,
I-
but it doesn't
no,
count towards the
I-
0.5%, the 40 units that we have to do to get a
No, if
one-year
you-
safe harbor
if
from
you-
getting 40B letters,
Yeah.
right? That's the issue.
If you need to produce 40 units a year to get there, and you only produce 20, you'll get 20 credits for 20, but you cannot then go to DHCP and ask for safe harbor consideration because you're making progress toward 40 without this thing filed there.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
So,
And we can't say, last year we got 20 units and we're gonna add it in and only do 20 this year,
But yes, if that unit got us to 10%, then we're done. I mean, there is no safe harbor because then we're at 10%, right? But because it doesn't, then we need to have this plan in place first before we start counting that 40 units for the 0.5%. It's,
this is a regulatory threshold, not anything.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So rewording suggestions, maybe a paragraph up front
I
that
think that makes sense.
spells
Even,
out
even
in
something that came from the board as a whole.
diplomatic
on
language
front,
that says, hey, this is a great inventory, we're prepared to go and put an implementation committee together.
Well, I'd be happy to start that, and
Yeah,
then
that would be
we're
helpful.
meeting
Good.
Wednesday? Did we say we're meeting Wednesday?
Yes,
Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, I know this wouldn't be on the
Put-
agenda, but I
put
could
some-
try to at least put something,
you could just disseminate it.
yeah, that, obviously people would need to look at it, and then, we can talk about it on Monday or something.
Okay,
If not Wednesday, maybe later in the week, but I'll target for Wednesday. But
Okay.
Lance, I'll maybe reach out to you because you
Sure,
had a
we can
few
do it, yeah.
specific
okay.
points as well. And then obviously, since Mike and Mariano are on the committee, you guys
Okay.
want to look at it carefully,
Yeah.
as well as everybody else.
Okay, let's draw that discussion to a close. We've gone around to that one. We have a consent agenda. Let's not forget that as I did last time.
No, we approved it last time.
No, I almost forgot it.
Oh, you almost forgot, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we
Mariano-
approve,
Mariano had kicked me under the table. We were still waiting for that one.
move that we approve one-day alcoholic beverage licenses for Diana Canosian, Boston Space Bartending, November 3rd, 2018 at Town Hall, for Laura Lewis for Essex Catering, October 7th, 2018, Rylock Farm, Amy Renskoff for Rylock Farm Conservancy, September 30th, 2018 at the 1827 Barn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the Winchester Girl Scouts request to use Beauregard Beach Friday, October 12th, 2018.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the Winchester Recreation Department request to close Mount Vernon Street for Halloween Horribles Parade, October 27th, 2018.
Can we join?
Second.
Seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the Veterans Day Parade, Sunday, November 11th, 2018, for the parade route as customary.
Seconded.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Do we want to do the minutes tonight?
They're there.
Okay, so one thing is, I had 2 copies of the June 15th meeting. I didn't see any changes, but are they the same?
They're the
Is it
same.
just a printing?
You just-
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
you just got
fine.
lucky.
all right, that's fine.
I did too.
And I just, because I had to go away for this funeral, I just, want to make sure that whatever edits I.
You already have
After,
They were
and,
included.
yeah, I just always like to eyeball that, so if it can be pending.
I didn't change anything. I didn't
Okay.
touch, Except for
Nevertheless, yeah.
the layout.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the meeting minutes for the meetings of June 11th, 2018, June 12th, 2018, June 13th, 2018, June 15th, 2018, and Monday, June 25th, 2018.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, we included the comments that you guys made. Jackie and I went over them several times. Jackie
just
gave
want to
a
double check it
final.
one more time that everything got
She
in, but
did.
pending that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays.
No.
Ayes have it.
No.
I cross-checked it.
Okay,
Okay, I just think I'd like to,
okay, 4-1 on that. Acceptance of those minutes. Okay.
Did we want,
was there a
did you
certain
want to make
date?
it?
What's that?
Certain date,
For what?
for your vote? Should we do the minutes by date? That's what you
Okay.
used to do on the planning board.
Yeah, well, we usually do them as a packet, but if there are any exceptions,
I mean, would that,
do you object?
Is there any specific date that you object to?
Or all of them?
No.
Okay, so it stands, okay. So we're gonna meet at, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just one final thing, you'll see some letters at the table here regarding the cemetery gate on Chesterford Road East. So I heard about this from a resident, went over there and checked it out, so they're,
That was FYI. Everybody got in the packets, that wasn't at home.
it was in the packet, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. So if you kind of read over those letters and some of the correspondence there, you'll see, and some of the pictures there, at one time, we had put a gate at the end of Chester Road East, which is a private road. That gate is in severe disrepair, and what I would call an attractive nuisance. As a lawyer, I don't know, it leads to a path to the cemetery that many kids access. So I think we've got to do a couple things. One thing is just take down the existing fence, and then or at least ask the town manager to take down, to direct DPW to do it. And then at a later point, make a decision on whether we put it back. It used to be.
This is a pedestrian or an auto access?
It's pedestrian, it's really just a path through the woods that is not,
Okay.
you probably couldn't even get through on a bike, it's probably a, walking, pathway. But we used to lock the cemetery at a certain period at night, and we don't any longer. So I think at some point there was kind of a reason to keep a fence there, but now there really isn't. There's open access to this cemetery 24/7, and it really is a beautiful community asset. And I think that many of the members of the cemetery advisory group had really wanted to open that space up to the community. So with that said, I don't know if we need to reach the decision tonight whether or not that needs to be gated, but we probably should at least ask the town manager to direct the DPW to remove the fence as it exists and get us some information on what it would cost to replace it. And then we can make a choice whether or not we thought that was advisable.
Okay, so maybe see if we can do that
Just
next
so I
week.
understand, it sounds like, this is a really important piece of correspondence. So are you saying that maybe we should just have it be one entrance?
I think he's saying take the fence down.
Take the gate down.
Maybe just a pedestrian.
And it's a very, if you're familiar with the road, there are, I think, 7 houses on it. I think the majority of the neighbors have sent something in saying that they would like it to be open without a fence there. It had been like that at one point.
Okay.
So, but we used to lock the cemetery, now we don't. That's the only gate to the cemetery. It's just kind of weird, and it's,
Any input from cemetery, Bill Ryerson, or?
Yes. So whenever everybody's ready.
We can actually,
So, I did meet with Mr. Hannon on this, who is in the email and registered his concern about the fact that the gate was open and his recall was traditionally closed and locked. And he was asking that it be put back to that condition, concern about activity of his neighbors with respect to the fence and the condition of the gate. So I confirmed with Mr. Gill that yes, in fact, that particular gate was always in a locked condition. So I said, until further notice, restore it to the locked condition. But then I did have concerns about the overall condition of the fencing and the gate. And then simultaneously, Mike brought forward the concern of other neighbors along the same lane, private way, Chesterford, to have it be available and accessible to the public, at least at the location where our property meets the private way. What people's rights over the private way would be is something that's not our jurisdiction. That's a different matter entirely, but as it relates to where the two properties adjoin, we could certainly either have the gate closed and installed, and a new one installed and closed, or we could just remove what is clearly substandard infrastructure at this point, this gate and the fence around it, and decide the board, and wait until
We dealt with a similar question
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 years ago, I think, and the question was, should the main gate be closed, or all gates be closed? And I think the consensus of that board at that time was no. One, because Mr. Gill, I believe, advised us that the main gate there off Commerce Street they couldn't close it without risk of rusting, fracking the masonry. We talked with the police about it at the time, and I think they also suggested that they didn't see that as could you keep people out of the thing at night? They thought that would both be not very effective, and it would make it difficult for them to cruise through. And it would also cost us somebody to be able to go there every night and unlock it and things like that. So at the time, the consensus was leave it open, and I don't think at the time we discussed this gate at all.
We
I
did.
don't think we've been paying attention to it, so maybe we go back and revisit that as
But
a.
it did
as a-
happen up in Mr. Ryerson,
Yeah.
right around the same time
Yeah.
I was getting the feedback from the local resident and Mr. Gill. And Mr. Ryerson, I think, would be of the opinion that it should stay open, but he understands that it's the board that makes the decision about, this board that makes the decision about
Maybe
accessibility.
Get some sense of the cost for
Yeah.
closing it or opening it, and
Yeah.
making sure that it's only pedestrian, so cars can't drive in there.
Yeah, I don't think that there is, they certainly, you know,
Can't go
you
very far.
definitely can't, so.
Okay. So it's not an issue of ballers.
It's not into that, and I don't think this is the kind of road that all of a sudden would get increased traffic based on the gate being open. I mean, it is, you know, it's very small, and it's a private way in the sense that it doesn't meet our zoning requirements, not in the sense that it is not open to vehicular traffic, so. you're
So it's a
not-
public right-of-way then?
Yes.
The street isn't.
Public access,
Uh,
public
access.
private street.
The street is a private way. We just have, it appears as though, since our property runs up to the back of it, we have access. We haven't researched that legally, you know, whether we have a right to pass, the town,
Yeah.
in the form of the cemetery ownership, have a right to pass and repass over Chesterford, but
We do
I
have.
would assume that there's access.
Yeah, we do have a hydrant there, we have a, you know,
Yeah.
sewer, drainage infrastructure, so, you know, I think it's.
Oh, okay, so there is a public right-of-way then?
Yes,
I mean, if there's sewer
Oh, there
infrastructure
may be an
and,
easement below ground.
oh, okay.
Yes.
Look, Richard, I guess I'm confused. If we're gonna leave it open,
Yeah.
it's an ugly eyesore, well, why can't we just get rid of it?
But you could.
I think we will.
Yeah, it'd be up to,
Yeah.
I guess the point I would make to the board is whether or not the neighborhood private way controversy is enough for you to hear from, you know, would you want me to give notice to
Yeah,
the
public,
owners?
yeah.
Yeah, and just to say you're considering a change of circumstance and leaving it open permanently.
Yeah, I think we
That's up
should
to you.
take it down the way that it is now, though. It
Yeah,
needs to be removed.
it's a hazard the way
Yeah.
it is now. I didn't, when I inquired of Jay, I really didn't focus on the,
Looks like there's a tree leaning on it.
yeah, there's
How
a
far does
tree
the
that
fence
crushed it.
go? So it's a.
Goes off to the sides,
It's- It doesn't actually go, you can even
not
get
the whole
around the fence
Oh.
from the other properties, so.
just have to
it's-
walk into the
So
woods.
what is it, like about 30 yards of fencing or something?
Probably, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
probably fair.
But it's not like it's the whole
Not
perimeter?
the whole
Okay.
perimeter.
Well, it once was, but it's deteriorated badly over the years, and by and large, they're replacing it in
Yeah,
sections.
So-
it has barbed wire facing, you know, in the interior to keep, I guess, to keep people from getting out.
Yeah, they don't want people getting, they pay
So,
us to get in.
I mean, if it's a hazard, if it's a safety hazard, and then I would say let's remove the gate now and then, you know, figure out,
Let's-
talk to the neighbors and
Yeah,
figure
let's-
out what to
yeah,
do. But let's not spend money putting a new
Well,
gate
we're not making a
before we,
decision on it tonight, because it's not a business
Okay.
agenda, but maybe bring it up and ask, you know, what would it cost to get rid of it?
I can find that out.
What would it cost to replace it?
Yep.
And what does the cemetery commission,
Well,
what their
to
general?
get rid of it,
figure-
I think our crews will just take it up.
Yeah, okay, but I'm
But
just,
to
I mean,
replace it-
just, you know,
Yeah.
sort of short, what are our options?
Yeah.
And
Cost to the
and then do
options.
we wanna hear, put it on the agenda, do we wanna hear from people in the neighborhood?
I think we should notice the neighbors and have
Yeah,
them speak.
definitely.
I mean, they've, you know, submitted their, you
Oh,
know,
that's okay.
a signed, letter. But I think, having, you know, an open discussion here is helpful, but I will underscore, I mean, I do think it's a liability to leave it in the way that it is currently.
Such poor condition.
So there's no decision that I think the board will reach which will leave the current fence in its state. So,
And I would tend to agree with
right?
that.
I mean, it looks like a safety, and probably kids walk through it every day to go through to the high school, right? To walk,
yeah, I think they
So-
climb over, it's rusty and spiked and barbed, it's bad news.
Nice, put it on the agenda like you said and get
Put it on the
some
agenda.
You want it for
neighborhood input and
October 1st, October 15th?
When's our next
it's only
meeting?
gonna be a long debate, hopefully.
Well, you
Maybe I
you
just-
may have neighbors that feel intensely
Well,
about it.
so I think there's two things.
Yeah.
One is fix the immediate safety
But
concern.
if we tear it,
Well, fix it means.
true, but if we tear
place
it down, they're gonna say, well, you've de facto done it without listening to us. So-
No, we'll also do a hearing, I mean, we'll just post a hearing for our next meeting.
Well, I mean, we would have to replace it. If we were to put a new gate, we would have to replace that.
Replace everything.
Okay,
I mean,
so,
it wouldn't be,
so if we're gonna do, we need some time to mail stuff to people, do we want to
That's what I'm
schedule
asking.
for 15?
Up to you.
I don't know how long it takes, how do we have to we're not holding a formal hearing, we're just noticing people.
The next meeting is,
10:01 or 10:15 or 10:09?
yeah, 10-1 is fine.
10-1, but we're just
That's a week from
noticing, we're notifying people, not,
Yeah, so we
not
need 2
posting a
weeks.
public hearing.
Yeah, because that's next week. That's not enough
Yeah.
time to notice
There's
people.
no rule that you need, I mean, you're just
Yeah.
giving them the courtesy of letting them know you're having
So I
it.
suggest we
It's up to you.
notify people and put it on the 15th.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, looks good.
Notify them we're doing what?
Well,
A public hearing.
well, not a hearing per se, well,
You have it on the agenda,
Public
have it on the agenda, public notice, you're gonna take the issue up on the agenda
so whether or not to
on
keep
the
it,
15th.
No.
And if you can attend and we'll
replace
take
the
comments,
infrastructure and keep it locked.
Whether or not we're going to, right, replace the gate,
or rip
Keep
it
it
out.
locked.
or,
Rip it out completely.
well, I think we need to fix the safety concern before the
I
15th.
don't,
Yeah, it sounds like
it
it.
sounds like a safety concern, but there's been no safety problems mentioned, it's been there for years, I think we can wait a week until we, if you rip it out, the neighbors who are wanting to have the gate back in there are gonna say you've already made the decision without our input. And I understand it looks bad, but I don't think there's any.
I think there's only one neighbor that opposes it. and
That's
they have
fine,
made
but
their
but
input,
we're
you
gonna,
know.
but we
Yeah.
wanted to hear them, you said, so let's hear it on the 15th and
They oppose
16th
what?
and rip it out.
Take rid of it?
Yeah.
They oppose making the access available, right?
So we can rip it out on the 16th, but we'll hear them on the 15th and see what the consensus is, make a decision and then do it,
Sounds good.
okay?
All right.
Now, there's some pricing in the meantime.
Okay, any further issues? Otherwise, we have a list of things for the first, so.
And then just looking ahead on the 9th, we have the joint meeting, and is that at 7:30, the joint meeting? In which case we'd have our own meeting at 6:30 possibly?
It says, doesn't say, I believe it is a regular planning board meeting, and it was listed as,
Joint right at the beginning.
on the 9th, and I don't have it written down. I'll have to find out. So, I don't know,
Okay, we'll find out.
well, let's see if the town said it. If it's posted.
But in any event, we may have our own business, like, warrant articles or whatever.
That night, you could have a license, you could
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
one-day license or something.
Ooh.
It's not on the calendar yet.
Not on the calendar.
Whatever, I just thought I'd highlight that
This,
we wanna reserve
this
time for.
this requirement that we not post anything on the calendar until we have an agenda is, I think, very ineffective, because I went looking for dates that we could meet, and none of our meetings are posted because, future dates, because we haven't,
No agenda.
no agenda yet. I think there ought to be a way to put a dummy agenda up to say be filled. I think this is,
It could have these topic headings
yeah,
without the
without
specifics.
the, you know, I mean, I think the way we're doing it, I understand it's a very strict interpretation by the town clerk, but I think it's doing us a disfavor, because you can't look
Right,
at
well, we know
October.
we'll always have matters from the audience and
Yeah.
licenses.
Have we had, I mean, it just
I don't
seems
know
like,
if it's-
just to put up a dummy one seems like it's,
You know, why do we even have to
it
post,
violates the spirit of it, but
you know, why can't we post the meeting as a prospective meeting and then fill it in a week ahead of time with the agenda?
can we have, Arvina just, give
I
us.
think we should get an opinion on that, because I think it's been adopted as practice by the town clerk on her reading, and it may be correct, but I think that it means you look at the calendar and you can't see who's meeting when,
Yeah.
because nothing's posted. I mean, it's the problem we were talking about earlier this evening.
Yeah.
So maybe we just make a discreet inquiry.
It's the whole reason I haven't been able to get to the gym lately, too.
Mhm.
I just,
But it's like a disservice to town residents who might wanna come to our meetings and don't even know if we have one.
I mean, reserve the, hold the date sort of posted
Yeah.
would be sufficient, so, okay. I'll follow up
where-
So
and.
do we have,
See, it goes,
we have things to sign?
I don't believe, well, I don't know.
Before we
Yes,
do that, can we?
Okay. So, let me call for,
So just-
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recess the meeting to Wednesday, September 26th at 8:30 a.m. to finish items at 8 a.m.
8 a.m.
8 AM,
To finish items that are on this agenda.
G5, yeah, and, okay.
I second that.
Okay, Chief.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
And there's
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
three